Hello everyone, I know you watch this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watched this video. Let's jump straight into the story. In the city of Aurora, Colorado, Angela Craig was loved for her warm smile and dedication to her family. As a mother of 6, her life seemed perfect, especially with her husband, James Craig, by her side. But behind their happy appearance, there were dark secrets waiting to come out. Angela's sudden health problems set off a shocking investigation that revealed lies, betrayal, and a deadly plan created by the very person she trusted the most. Angela was born on April 15, 1975, in the bustling town of Dodge City, Kansas. She grew up as a beloved member of a large family with 10 children. Known for her wit, intelligence, and her ability to engage in captivating conversations, Angela was always the heart of any gathering. Her love for animals, despite her allergies, was evident throughout her life, and she also had a deep passion for reading and woodworking. As a student of interior design, Angela found beauty in creating and arranging living spaces. However, her most important priority was always her family. She maintained strong relationships with her siblings and was quick to offer a helping hand to friends and even strangers. Angela's passion for genealogy led her to become a family history consultant, where she helped people reconnect with distant relatives. She was also highly active in her church, serving as a choir director, teacher, and youth group leader. On December 18, 1999, Angela married James Craig, a man with dreams of becoming a doctor. In 2006, those dreams became a reality when James earned his doctorate in dental surgery from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. While at the university, James played a key role in establishing the International Dental Program, assisting foreign-born dentists in obtaining their licenses in the United States. By October 2006, James began practicing in Aurora, Colorado. And over the span of 23 years, Angela and James welcomed 6 children into their family. Despite the physical distance, Angela remained close with her siblings, especially her sister, Toni, who lived in Utah. The two spoke on the phone daily and made time for many memorable trips together. With James's dental practice and Angela's deep involvement in the local community, the Craig family seemed happy and content. However, life took an unexpected turn on March 15, 2023 at 11 a.m., when Angela was rushed to the hospital suffering from a debilitating headache, dizziness, and nausea. James was by her side, providing support during the frightening ordeal. Despite the medical team's efforts, Angela's condition worsened by 2 p.m. when she suffered a severe seizure. Doctors acted quickly, placing her on life support as her concerned family sought answers. Angela's 3rd hospital visit in just 10 days with recurring symptoms of headache, nausea, and dizziness, yet no clear cause had been identified. This time, however, her condition was far more serious, leaving the medical team puzzled. As Angela's condition deteriorated, 2 close friends, Ryan Redfern and his wife, arrived at the hospital. Ryan, a fellow dentist and James's longtime friend from their university days, was also a financial partner in James's dental practice. In 2021, when James faced financial challenges, Ryan stepped in to help save the practice. His wife, who held a doctorate in nursing, was aware of Angela's recent health struggles and wanted to offer support. Angela's symptoms had first appeared on March 5, 2023, after returning from a visit to her sister in Utah. Feeling unwell, she sought medical attention on March 6, but the doctors found nothing alarming, prescribing her standard medication and recommending rest. However, Angela's condition worsened, leading to another hospital visit on March 9th, raising concern among her friends. On March 9th, while Angela was hospitalized, Ryan's wife reached out to James, offering her help. James, though appreciative, assured her that they had things under control at the moment. The next day, March 10th, Ryan's wife followed up, checking in to see if there had been any progress in Angela's diagnosis and offering her assistance again. James, grateful for her concern, acknowledged how challenging the situation had been, marking the beginning of a critical chapter in Angela's health journey. James expressed his growing concern as the doctors had conducted numerous tests, including several blood draws. Thankfully, the regular blood tests came back normal, ruling out autoimmune disorders and diabetes. The main issue at the time seemed to be Angela's blood pressure. Over the course of 24 hours, she had been given 5 liters of 4 fluids, but her blood pressure remained alarmingly low. Despite the medical interventions, Angela still felt quite unwell. The doctors decided to keep her in the hospital for another night, hoping that she could return home the following day. Over the next few days, Ryan's wife continued to check in on Angela's health, offering unwavering support. James shared that additional tests had been run, including an MRI due to a family history of brain tumors, as well as ultrasounds and CT scans of her head, chest, and abdomen. Surprisingly, all these tests came back normal, and there didn't seem to be any medical explanation for her declining health. Without clear answers, Angela was eventually allowed to go home, but a troubling question remained. If all the medical reports showed Angela was perfectly healthy, why was her condition deteriorating by the day? Unfortunately, on March 15, 2023, Angela's health took a sharp turn for the worse. This time, her symptoms were even more severe. She was struggling with extreme dizziness, nausea, and severe stomach pain. Unable to reach James, who was at his clinic, Angela called her brother for help. He rushed her to the hospital, where she was admitted around 11 a.m. Upon receiving the alarming news, James hurried to be by his wife's side. In the midst of this crisis, James contacted his partner's wife to share the distressing update, and even sent her 2 photos of Angela in the hospital room. Surrounded by medical professionals, Angela suffered a stroke and became unresponsive. Deeply concerned, Ryan and his wife decided to visit the hospital. They sent James a message to let him know they were on their way to offer support during this uncertain time. While en route to the hospital, Ryan received a troubling call from Caitlin, a relatively new office manager at the place where James worked. Caitlin had noticed some odd occurrences that raised questions about Angela's health. She shared an incident that took place on March 6, 2023. Caitlin had been working late at the dental office when James unexpectedly showed up, despite not having any patients scheduled. What struck Caitlin as odd was that instead of heading to his own office, James went down the hall to use a computer in one of the exam rooms. This was unusual because James typically used his own computer in his office, and this deviation from his normal routine seemed strange. About 30 minutes after Caitlin left the office, she received a text message from James. In the message, James mentioned that he was expecting a personal package to be delivered to the office and asked Caitlin to ensure it was received. He emphasized that no one else should open it. On March 13, 2023, the package James had mentioned finally arrived. However, when Caitlin went to pick it up, she discovered that a colleague had already opened it. Remembering James's request for confidentiality, Caitlin resealed the package and handed it directly to James. While repackaging it, something unusual caught her eye, a hazardous material label. The label was affixed to a cylindrical container marked with the words potassium cyanide. Caitlin assumed the chemical might have some medical or dental use she wasn't familiar with, so she resealed the box and quickly gave it to James. Later that day, she noticed James leaving the office, clutching the cylindrical container wrapped in brown paper. Her suspicions deepened. Why was James taking potassium cyanide home? Curious, Caitlin turned to Google to investigate the uses of potassium cyanide. That's when she stumbled upon a shocking discovery. The symptoms of potassium cyanide poisoning closely resembled those Angela had been experiencing. As Angela's condition worsened, with symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and low blood pressure, Ryan arrived at the hospital, still in shock from what Caitlin had told him. He met up with his wife, and together they went to see Angela, who was now on life support. Without wasting any time, Ryan approached one of the nurses on duty, sharing his suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by James with potassium cyanide. Though taken aback by the unexpected information, the nurse took the claim seriously and agreed to conduct a new round of tests on Angela. Aware of the gravity of the situation, the nurse also dialed 911 to alert the authorities. Meanwhile, James stepped outside to take a phone call, giving Ryan and his wife an opportunity to leave the hospital. However, their departure was interrupted by a frantic call from James, demanding to know why they had left and informing them that the hospital staff suspected he had poisoned his wife. Ryan didn't hold back. He was upfront with James, confronting him about the mysterious package delivered to the dental office and the unsettling contents. He directly asked James why he had ordered potassium cyanide. Backed into a corner, James finally admitted that he had indeed purchased the chemical, but he claimed that Angela had asked him to do so, never imagining she would use it. After the tense phone call, James texted Ryan, pleading with him not to share their conversation with anyone, especially the police. He expressed concern that Ryan's involvement would only harm his family further. James acknowledged Ryan's motivations, but insisted that if Ryan had come to him directly man-to-man, rather than involving others, they might have avoided the current chaos. His frustration and anger toward Ryan were palpable. Ryan, however, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Angela's deteriorating health. He made a crucial decision and contacted the police, sharing everything he knew and urging them to investigate further. Later that night, well past midnight, the police arrived at the hospital to discuss Angela's dire condition. She remained on life support with no brain activity. The next day, on March 16, 2023, investigators visited Caitlin, the office manager. That's when the truth began to unravel. Caitlin revealed that on the morning of March 6, 2023, before Angela's first hospital visit, James had prepared a pre-workout protein shake for her. He proudly mentioned it at the office, portraying himself as a caring husband. However, things took a sinister turn when Angela suddenly became dizzy, and from that moment on, her health rapidly declined. Caitlin didn't hold back, also discussing the suspicious package and her concerns about the potassium cyanide. She explained how this lethal chemical could produce the same symptoms Angela had been experiencing, and in some cases could be fatal. Ryan, who had joined the conversation at the dental clinic, added more to the story, shattering the image of the seemingly happy Craig family. He disclosed that in 2021, when James was facing financial troubles and the threat of bankruptcy, he had confided in Ryan about his marital problems. Shockingly, at that time, James had been contemplating divorce. Even more heartbreaking was James's later admission that Angela had contemplated ending her life in 2022 through an overdose, but James had intervened to save her. According to Ryan, James claimed that Angela's self-harming tendencies became more pronounced when he asked for a divorce in December 2022. Despite these serious issues, James never reported any of Angela's behavior to the authorities or sought professional help for her mental health. This pattern of secrecy and neglect raised serious questions about recent events. To get a clearer picture of Angela's mental state, the police interviewed the couple's 6 children. Surprisingly, they painted a different picture, describing their mother as happy and full of energy, with no signs of the troubling behavior James had mentioned. This contradiction only deepened the mystery and suggested that James might have been fabricating a story to explain Angela's worsening health. As suspicion mounted against James, the police launched a full investigation. They obtained search warrants for both the Craig residence and James's dental office. They also began reviewing James's phone records and text conversations with Angela dating back to March 6, 2023, the day she first reported feeling unwell. The text messages from that day revealed a disturbing exchange. Angela expressed her appreciation for a coffee James had made for her, showing affection and optimism for the day. However, soon after, she mentioned feeling dizzy and off, prompting James to suggest she check her blood pressure. The conversation took a troubling turn when James referenced heavy medications and acknowledged his past concerns, hinting at a possible trigger for Angela. He voiced concern about her symptoms, comparing them to those of a stroke, and asked about any weakness she might have been experiencing. This unsettling exchange, combined with the other evidence, left investigators with more questions than answers. Following the unsettling exchange between James and Angela, where he continued asking about her symptoms and offering suggestions, a troubling level of awareness and concern over her condition became apparent. The investigation took a significant turn when the police decided to inspect James' computer. They uncovered 2 email accounts linked to him, along with a disturbing search history related to Angela's declining health, raising more suspicions about his involvement. In February, just a month before Angela was hospitalized, James had searched terms like, "How many grams of pure arsenic does it take to kill a human? And can arsenic be detected in an autopsy?" He had also looked up chemical suppliers in the city, all of which raised red flags during the investigation. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a purchase made by James on Amazon for a product labeled as 99.999% crystalline metalloid arsenic. The product description explicitly stated that ingesting this chemical could be fatal. Further probing into James' online activity revealed alarming YouTube videos he had watched. One video titled, "Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Don't Show Signs of Murder," provided instructions on how to create plant-based poisons. He also conducted 3 more searches related to homemade poison making, specifically from plants. As if that weren't disturbing enough, the investigators found another video detailing the effects of cyanide and arsenic poisoning, highlighting how difficult it is for doctors to detect these substances. The most incriminating piece of evidence came in the form of an order James placed for potassium cyanide. At this point, the puzzle pieces were coming together. It was becoming clear that James had been poisoning Angela all along. But why would someone poison his wife and the mother of his children? Was it related to his desire for a divorce? As investigators dug deeper, they interviewed friends and family members. Angela's sister provided critical insight. She revealed that only those closest to Angela knew the truth about her marriage with James, which was far from the loving facade they presented to the world. She disclosed that James had a history of extramarital affairs with multiple women. Even more shocking, James had confessed to Angela about his addiction to inappropriate online material since his teenage years. One particularly disturbing incident from 5 or 6 years earlier caught the attention of the police. The woman recalled Angela telling her that she feared James had deliberately drugged her. Angela suspected that James had drugged her in order to prevent her from intervening in his activities, shedding light on some of the strange text messages between the couple. However, police remained skeptical of James' explanation about drugging Angela, finding it unreasonable that he would resort to such extreme measures. She also shared that Angela had longed to escape her marriage, a sentiment she had expressed repeatedly over the past 16 years. Yet, every time Angela gathered the courage to leave, James would skillfully manipulate her into staying. Their marital issues extended beyond their personal relationship and into James' struggling dental practice. Further complicating the situation, James had tried his luck gambling in Las Vegas, losing over $2,000 despite being in $2 million of debt. To the police, it became clear that beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage, the Craig household was rife with turmoil. The investigation uncovered even more damning evidence when they found emails detailing round-trip flights from 2 separate occasions. These tickets were reserved for Karen, an orthodontist based in Texas. The emails between Karen and James were far from professional. Their tone was intimate. Karen had filed for divorce in 2022 and had been in a relationship with James, something Angela knew nothing about. Digging deeper, investigators found that these flights were purchased on the same day arsenic was delivered to James' home. This suggested a calculated plan for James to be with Karen on March 16th. One of Karen's emails to James with the subject line, "See you soon," expressed her regret over the events happening in James's life that week. She apologized for not being a part of his world and for keeping her distance. As police gathered more evidence against James, hospital staff fought to save Angela. Tragically, on March 18th at 4:29 p.m., Angela was declared brain dead. She passed away without ever knowing the truth about what her husband had been plotting. Just hours after Angela was removed from life support, James was officially charged with first-degree premeditated murder. He didn't have much time to reflect on the charges because on March 19th, he was arrested. A few days later, James found himself in a Colorado courtroom for his initial appearance. As the charges against him were read aloud, a mix of friends, family, and even some of James and Angela's children watched in shock. The disheveled 45-year-old man in an orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, was a far cry from the smiling blonde man seen in family photos. James Craig, already facing the grave charge of first-degree murder, was also hit with a second charge, tampering with physical evidence. The judge set James bail at a staggering $10 million. His trial is set for December 2024. A week after Angela's death, new information emerged, revealing that she had not one, but 3 life insurance policies in her name. While it's not confirmed, this raised the chilling possibility that collecting those life insurance payouts might have been part of James' grim plan, along with his affair. Now, Angela's 6 children are left to grapple with the devastating reality of losing their mother while their father stands trial for her murder. Angela's children were her pride and joy, and following James' arrest, Angela's family stepped in to care for them. They made it clear that James's extended family should not be held responsible for his terrible actions. In Angela's obituary, her family and loved ones tried to capture the essence of her life beyond the tragedy of her untimely death. When Angela was declared brain dead, her family made the brave decision to donate her organs. While they couldn't save her, they found bittersweet comfort in knowing that her legacy lives on through the lives she helped save. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes. where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. Story 2. The case took place in a large town in Cienfuegos County, located in the southern part of Hubei Province's Huangxi Autonomous Prefecture. On the afternoon of October 26, 2010, the Cienfuegos County Police Command Center suddenly received an emergency call. The caller was a middle-aged man named Liang Zijuan. According to Zijuan's statement, he suspected his house had been broken into and his wife had mysteriously disappeared. About 30 minutes after receiving the report, Cienfuegos County Police quickly arrived at the scene. Zijuan's residence was located at Building 1, Yanhei Road, in the old Planning Commission residential area of Cienfuegos County. It was an ordinary 3-bedroom apartment. According to Zijuan's statement, before the incident, he had gone to the Huangxi City area and didn't return home until the following afternoon. When he first entered, he didn't notice anything unusual as the lights and TV in the living room were still on. But when he went into the master bedroom, Zijuan found the room in chaos. Clothes were scattered on the bed, and the drawers of the dressing table and bedside cabinet were all open. Zijuan said he tried to call his wife, Zhang Xiuni, but discovered her phone was turned off and couldn't be reached. Faced with this strange situation, Zijuan had no choice but to call the police. At the chaotic scene, investigators began their examination. They discovered a horrifying sight in the closed wardrobe in the master bedroom. Among the colorful clothes, they found a barefoot wearing jeans in a curled-up position. The police felt a chill run down their spines. After pushing aside the clothes, they found a female body with closed eyes, a pale face, and no signs of life. Zaiwani! Zaiwani! The police heard screaming in their ears as Zijuan suddenly ran to the wardrobe sobbing. The woman's body in the closet turned out to be his missing wife, Zhang Zaiwani. Due to the homicide, technical officers and forensic experts in charge of examining evidence also arrived at the scene. Through initial examination, forensic experts found that the victim Shuhani was fully clothed with no signs of sexual assault. However, there was a wound on the back of her head caused by a hard object, suggesting that the perpetrator might have suddenly attacked Shuhani from behind. Additionally, there was a clear strangulation mark on the victim's neck. Therefore, forensic experts speculated that she had been strangled to death with a rope or similar object, resulting in death by asphyxiation. However, at the crime scene, technical officers couldn't find any suspicious murder weapons. The only thing they found was a blood-stained cloth hidden in the bedroom wardrobe. Technical officers speculated that this cloth was likely used by the perpetrator to clean up the crime scene. Although they collected many fingerprints in the room, subsequent analysis revealed that these fingerprints belonged to the victim Shuani and her husband Zijuan. These signs suggested that the perpetrator might have worn gloves and deliberately erased some criminal traces at the scene after the murder. Due to the numerous signs of ransacking, investigators initially suspected this might be a burglary, followed by the elimination of witnesses. However, subsequent examination results showed this was a very illogical burglary scene. Although the belongings in the master bedroom were thoroughly ransacked, strangely, most of the gold and silver jewelry in the bedside cabinet and the cash in the wallet remained intact, untaken. The perpetrators seemed to be looking for something more important. Through Zijuan's careful comparison, only 3 items were missing from the scene. These were a wedding ring, a pair of earrings, and Sun's mobile phone. The total value of these items was less than 5,000 yuan, about $700. This strange situation naturally made the police very suspicious. If the perpetrator was a thief, why would they leave behind expensive gold and silver jewelry and cash, only taking a phone and a few pieces of the victim's jewelry? Was it because they panicked during the crime and forgot their original purpose? But if so, why could the perpetrator still calmly clean up the scene without leaving any fingerprints or clues? To find clues, technical officers also carefully examined the doors and windows at the scene. The result was that all doors were intact with no signs of forced entry. Even the cobwebs and dirt on the outer wall and drainage pipes were undamaged. Even the dust on the windowsills remained intact with no traces or white marks. These details showed that they didn't enter the scene by climbing or breaking in. Combining all these clues, the police had an initial profile of the perpetrator. First, the perpetrator might have entered the scene easily, likely someone known to the victim or someone she didn't guard against. Second, the perpetrator had strong anti-investigation capabilities, possibly someone with a prior criminal record. Third, the perpetrator wasn't simply motivated by theft, but might have had other motives. Based on these initial profiles, the police decided to conduct a comprehensive investigation into Shunny's social relationships. As a result, they quickly discovered several very strange situations. After the incident, Sienai's body was quickly taken to Cienfuegos County Police for more detailed examination. News of her murder at home gradually spread throughout the area. With her beautiful face and natural singing talent, Sienai was considered a renowned folk singer in the Unxi Autonomous Prefecture. She often appeared performing on local media. Therefore, local people were very curious about Sienai's mysterious death, but no one knew what she had gone through on the night of the incident. Regarding his wife's sudden death, Zijun also seemed very surprised. According to his statement on the evening of the incident, he had called Zaiwanyi, and everything was normal then. She was alone at home watching TV while embroidering cloth shoes. Through examination, the forensic doctor determined the time of death to be between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the night of the incident. However, this precise time frame made the Cienfuegos police feel very strange, because if the perpetrator was an intruder with the purpose of theft, they would surely choose midnight to act, not when the homeowner wasn't yet sound asleep. In other words, the female singer Sun, who might have been killed out of hatred or love affairs. However, regarding this bold speculation, Sun Yi's mother Chin Yongfeng disagreed. According to Mrs. Chun, her daughter was very gentle and had never had conflicts or grudges with anyone. Although Sun Yi had a previous marriage, she had divorced peacefully with her ex-husband without any emotional conflicts. Through subsequent investigation and interrogation, the police learned that Sienai's mother, Mrs. Chun, also had complex social relationships. In Hubei Province's Anxi Autonomous Prefecture, she was a highly skilled Tujia ethnic embroidery artisan and a representative of Hubei Province's intangible cultural heritage. Usually Mrs. Chun ran a Tujia embroidery workshop, and Sienai often came to help at the workshop. She was the successor her mother carefully trained. But Mrs. Chun could never have imagined that her beloved daughter would be suddenly murdered at home. As the investigation deepened, police conducted a comprehensive investigation into Zaiwanyi and Zijun's social relationships. All those possibly related to the case were interrogated and checked in turn. However, these relatives and friends all provided alibis for themselves. On the afternoon of the second day after the incident, the investigation had reached a deadlock. And at this moment, the police suddenly came up with a bold investigative direction. They discovered that as the victim's husband, Zijun appeared too calm during the investigation. He didn't seem like someone who had just suffered the pain of losing his wife. Based on this suspicion, the investigators first met with Mrs. Chun and asked about her son-in-law Zijun's daily behavior. As a result, Mrs. Chun once again strongly disagreed with the police's suspicion. According to her account, around May 2009, Sinny had met Zijun. Shortly after that, they got married. In her impression, Zijun was a caring, filial, and considerate son-in-law. Whenever Xiu and I felt unwell, he would always put aside his work and return home to take care of her attentively. Although in the eyes of outsiders, the marital relationship between Zijun and Xiu and I was very harmonious, the police still felt there was something strange about Zijun's behavior after the incident. To not miss any possibilities, the police decided to investigate his specific whereabouts before and after the incident. According to Zijun's statement on October 25th before the incident, he went alone to the central hospital in the Anxi City area for a medical examination and didn't return home to Cienfuegos County until the afternoon of October 26th. To verify Zijun's statement, the police later went to the Anxi City area to collect surveillance footage and relevant witness statements. According to a street surveillance camera in the Anxi City area, at 7:02 p.m. on the night of the incident, Zijun was walking on a local street. Additionally, investigators found a local hotel employee. According to this employee's statement, around 10 p.m. on the night of the incident, Zijun was indeed in the hotel and had talked with him. The distance from the Anxi City area to the crime scene in Cienfuegos County was about 62 miles. Even calculating at 62 miles per hour, it would take more than an hour to travel from the Anxi City area to Cienfuegos County. In other words, Zijun would hardly have had enough time to travel between the two locations to commit the crime. After the suspicion about Zijun was eliminated, the police investigation once again reached a deadlock. At this point, they hadn't yet realized that the breakthrough to expose the whole truth of the case was quietly lying in an inconspicuous corner of the scene. 3 days had passed since the incident. Zijuan and Mrs. Chun came to the police station almost every day to ask about the progress of the investigation. Along with the local people's buzzing discussions, the police were under great pressure to solve the case. To find a breakthrough, the then Deputy Chief of Xianfeng County Police, Zhang Rongjong, decided to return to the scene with 2 technical officers for a second examination. After the incident, the victim's room had been completely sealed off by the police. The entire scene still maintained its initial state after the crime was reported. Although the perpetrator had carefully cleaned up the scene, this time Rongjong and his colleagues still collected an incomplete shoe print in an inconspicuous corner of the living room. Through measurements, technical officers discovered this shoe print came from a size 6 US shoe. This discovery made them very excited because the shoes Zijuan wore when entering the scene were size 8.5 US. In other words, this size 6 shoe print wasn't left by Zijuan. Based on previous profiles of the perpetrator, the police decided to once again summon all acquaintances around Xuani and Zijuan for trace analysis and comparison. This included Xuani's ex-husband, Zijuan's ex-wife, and several relatives and friends from both sides, totaling more than 20 key suspects. However, after comparison, all these people were eliminated because their shoe sizes were all larger than size 6. Although such extensive screening didn't bring any breakthrough clues, the police still firmly believed that this incomplete shoe print must still contain some undiscovered clues. Therefore, Rongjong specially invited a footprint expert from the Hubei Provincial Police Department, Meng Xiaoping, to help analyze the clues. Xiaoping carefully observed this size 6 shoe print and quickly discovered something unusual. Xiaoping explained to the task force members that in this shoe print, the toe, front shoulder, and heel all had clear pressure marks. But the arch was in an empty state with no pressure marks. This situation showed that the person who left the shoe print must have been wearing shoes too small for their feet. In other words, the shoe size that the perpetrator usually wore must be larger than size 6. Xiaoping believed the perpetrator's actual shoe size must be around size 8 US, age above 35, height between 5 feet 5 inches and 5 feet 7 inches, weight between 143 and 154 pounds, with a medium slightly thin build. The perpetrator, deliberately wearing small shoes to disguise footprints, showed they had some understanding of Chinese police criminal investigation methods. But what they didn't know was that Chinese police had reached a high level in examining and analyzing traces in footprints. Moreover, afterward, Xiaoping went to the scene and sprinkled powder on the floors of the rooms. Although the perpetrator had used cloth to wipe the floor, some remaining blood stains and footprints on the floor gradually appeared. Based on these hidden footprints, technical officers quickly restored the perpetrator's general movement route in the room. The place with the most hidden footprints was the living room of the scene. This showed that the perpetrator had carried out the killing here. Afterward, they had moved the body into the master bedroom and hidden it in the wardrobe. Additionally, bloody footprints also appeared in the dining room and adjacent bathroom. From this, technical officers deduced they had gone to the bathroom to get a cloth for wiping and then proceeded to clean up the scene. From these movement routes, it could be seen that the perpetrator was extremely calm. However, Xiaoping was still confident in promising the police that as long as they found all suspicious persons, he could identify the perpetrator within 2 hours. Therefore, the police again summoned more than 20 suspects who had been screened before, had them wear size 6 shoes, and took their footprints. However, after Xiaoping compared them one by one, the footprints of all suspects didn't match in terms of pressure points and shape. Could the police have missed any other relatives or friends? Time passed to October 31st, 2010, 7 days after the incident. They decided to return to the scene for the 3rd time. At the scene, Rongjong and his colleagues accidentally saw Xuani and Zijuan's wedding photos. These photos made them think of something called a gift money register. The so-called gift money register is when 2 people get married. Those who attend the wedding record the amount of money they give as gifts in a register. In other words, in Xuani and Zijuan's gift money register, there must still be records of many relatives and friends' names, and the real perpetrator might be hidden among them. Following this investigative direction, investigators quickly found Xuani and Zijuan's gift money register. However, they discovered a very strange situation. In this register, a corner of one page had been torn off. Based on the size and arrangement of characters on the page, the torn-off part must have contained about 5 to 6 names. To clarify exactly what these names were, the police again found Zijun to assist in the investigation. However, due to the large number of wedding attendees, Zijun couldn't remember at that time. And at this moment, Rongjong and his colleagues thought of something else. Usually, before holding a wedding, people would make a list of relatives and friends to invite. Although this invitation list didn't necessarily have to completely match the later gift money register, the initial draft might contain more names. Therefore, the police immediately acted and found an original draft of the gift money register in a paper box at the scene. Through careful comparison, Xianfeng police discovered that 7 people appeared in this original draft, but weren't recorded in the official gift money register. After screening each person afterward, finally, only one suspicious subject remained, named Lu Hushan. Although the original draft still recorded his phone number, this phone number could no longer be contacted. This mysterious situation increased the police's suspicion. But who is Lu Hushan? The police asked relatives of both Zaiwanyi and Zijuan, and all said they didn't know him. Next, the police searched for the name Lu Hushan in the population information system. But strangely, there were no registration records of him in the local population information. Based on previous case-solving experience, investigators began using some homophonic and similar-sounding words to search more broadly. As a result, they luckily found a middle-aged man named Lu Hushan. However, relatives of Zhang Zaiwanyi and Liang Zijun still claim they didn't know Lu Hushan. Through subsequent investigation, they learned that Lu Hushan was 32 years old and was originally a folk artist. Usually, he mainly did performances like lion dancing and dragon dancing, but later, due to business failure, he had no stable income and owed several $1,000s. 2 days later, police went to Hushan's residence and found he wasn't home. But on the floor, they still collected some shoe prints. Through subsequent analysis and comparison, technical officers were surprised to discover that among them were 2 shoe prints that completely matched the size 6 shoe prints left at the crime scene. This unexpected clue came too suddenly. The police basically determined that Hushan was highly suspicious of committing the crime, although his motive for the crime was still a mystery. After many efforts to search, the police finally got clues about Hushan's hiding place from a mahjong parlor. About 5 days ago, he had moved into a relatively remote rented room on the outskirts of a town in Xianfeng County. To avoid alerting the suspect, police decided to implement a secret arrest operation. First, they organized a tight surveillance around the boarding house, then sent 6 plainclothes officers to secretly enter the room where Hushan was staying. In less than 30 seconds, the plainclothes officers subdued and handcuffed him. However, the interrogation after the arrest didn't go smoothly. Faced with police questions, Hushan first remained silent for a full day and night, then refused to admit any connection to Shini's death. The interrogation officer had to present the footprint evidence comparison. At this point, Lu Hushan finally spoke up and posed a thought-provoking question, and this question directly exposed an extremely carefully concealed conspiracy. In the interrogation room, the suspect Hushan's first words made the investigators feel somewhat puzzled. He asked if someone uses a knife to harm another person, who bears the greater guilt, the person or the knife. Initially, the police felt Hushan seemed to be asking a meaningless question, but after careful consideration, the interrogation officer suddenly realized that Hushan was implying that he was merely a knife, and behind him was a mastermind who borrowed the knife to kill. After multiple interrogations, he finally admitted to the crime and revealed the mastermind who directed him to commit the murder. And this mastermind was none other than Liang Zijun, the victim's husband. According to Hushan's confession, he and Zijun were former colleagues. Later, they had also done business together. Although the business failed, they maintained close contact afterward. Hushan stated that Zijun had instigated him to kill his wife, Shiweni, to collect a large insurance payout. And under Zijun's meticulous plan, this murder scheme for insurance fraud had attempted 4 times, only succeeding on the attempt. On December 28, 2010, police arrested suspect Liang Zijun. However, when faced with irrefutable evidence, Liang Zijun uttered a shocking statement. "Whoever marries me, I would kill them." It turned out that the marriage between Zijun and Shiweni had been a carefully designed trap from the beginning. According to Zijun's confession, he was originally a worker at Xianfeng Tobacco Factory, then switched to working as a driver for his brother-in-law's mining company, earning over 3,000 yuan, about $440 per month. However, whether it was the stable job at the tobacco factory or the daily hard work of driving, these laborious jobs made him feel dissatisfied. He desperately wanted to escape ordinary life, always dreaming of becoming rich overnight to live a luxurious life. But the path to wealth seemed to always be unlucky for him. Until one chance occasion, Zijun said he had watched a Western movie about insurance fraud by killing chickens. Afterward, the unfulfilled dream of wealth in his heart seemed to suddenly be ignited. After some thought, he conceived a cruel scheme. He decided to apply the method from the movie to his wife. At that time, Zijun was still not divorced from his ex-wife's son mucking. To implement the plan, he first found multiple insurance policies for mucking and created opportunities for her to sign insurance applications. But unexpectedly, mucking refused and told him, "Our family is already so poor we don't have enough money to spend. Why do we need to buy so much insurance?" At this point, Zijun feared the insurance fraud plan would be exposed, so he temporarily suspended the plan. Not long after, proposed divorce to Mu Qin. However, after the divorce, Zijun still didn't give up his path to wealth. He continued to look for his next target. Due to work, he later became acquainted with Zhang Yongjin, the director of the Xianfeng County branch of Enchi Transport Company, and Zhang Yongjin was Zhang Suni's father. At that time, Suni was already divorced. After her first failed marriage, she had returned home to Xianfeng County from Guangzhou City in Guangdong Province. Under the matchmaking of Mr. Zhang Yongjin, Zijun, who appeared honest and simple on the outside, very naturally got to know the beautiful singer Zhang Suni. In Zijun's eyes, Suni had grown up in a well-off family, had a rather naive personality, and didn't guard against others. Without doubt, this was a rare target. With Mr. Zhang Yongjin's help, he quickly won Suni's heart. As for the plan to kill his wife for insurance money, he still never gave up. Even before marriage, on July 15th, Zijun had bought Suni her first personal accident insurance policy with a maximum coverage of 240,000 yuan, about $35,300. But at this time, Suni was immersed in passionate love and had no suspicion about his evil scheme. Until October 1st, 2009, 41-year-old Liang Zijun and 29-year-old Zhang Suni officially married. Less than 3 months after marriage, Zijun continued to push forward with his plan. On December 15, 2009, he bought a second insurance policy for Suni, and this time the maximum coverage was 500,000 yuan, about $73,500. Not long after, he persuaded his wife to buy a third personal accident insurance policy with a maximum coverage of 320,000 yuan, about $47,000. At this point, the total death benefit from Suni's 3 insurance policies had reached 1,060,000 yuan, about $155,800. And of course, the beneficiary of all these insurance payouts was Liang Zijun. After everything was prepared, he began implementing the second part of the plan, which was borrowing a knife to kill. First, he approached his former colleague Lu Fushan and revealed the entire plan to kill his wife for insurance money. Initially, Fushan showed hesitation at Zijun's proposal, thinking the plan was too risky and dangerous. However, when Zijun offered a payment of 60,000 yuan, about $8,800, Fushan, who was drowning in debt, began to waver. Seeing Fushan still hesitating, Zijun decided to increase the temptation. He promised that once he received the insurance money, Fushan would receive 100,000 yuan, about $14,700 in payment. When hearing this huge sum of money, the previously hesitant Fushan immediately agreed. Thus, this dirty exchange was established. After the Chinese New Year in 2010, the two decided to act. Zijun secretly directed Fushan to monitor Suni and choose an appropriate time to strike. To avoid suspicion, he specifically requested leave from his unit for 2 days and lied about going to Chongqing City for medical treatment. However, during the surveillance, Suni happened to go out with friends, so Fushan couldn't find a suitable opportunity to strike. After this first failed attempt, Zijun realized that if they wanted to execute the plan, they needed to think of a more discreet method. By May 2010, Zijun took advantage of his job as a driver at the mining company to secretly bring home some explosives and detonators. This time, he decided to use a detonation device to create a fire, disguising it as a sudden accident to achieve the purpose of destroying the body. According to Zijun's confession, he had secretly hidden explosives behind the gas tank in the kitchen then placed detonators beside it. Finally, he placed a mosquito coil next to the detonators. The plan was to secretly light the mosquito coil, and its spark would ignite the detonator, finally causing the explosives and gas tank to explode, creating an explosion that would appear to be caused by improper gas use. After preparing everything, Zijun once again took sick leave and left Xianfeng County. Meanwhile, Fushan took Liang Zijun's house keys and secretly broke into the apartment. He hid behind the living room curtains, quietly waiting for Suni to return home. According to Fushan's account, he planned to wait until Suni went to shower, then light the mosquito coil and quietly leave. Unfortunately, that evening, due to working overtime, Suni didn't return home until 2 a.m. Waiting for too long made Lu Fushan completely lose patience, and without waiting for Suni to fall asleep, he hastily went to the kitchen to light the mosquito coil. However, he unexpectedly made too much noise and caught Suni's attention. She thought there was a thief and quickly called Zijun. At this point, Zijun knew the plan was about to be exposed, so he immediately comforted Suni to stay in the master bedroom, lock the door and not come out. Then he notified Fushan to quickly retreat. The meticulous plan failed again, and Zijun could only wait for the next suitable opportunity. But he worried Suni would discover the detonation device in the kitchen. So he decided to abandon this action plan and secretly remove the explosives and detonators. Not long after, Zijun thought of an easier murder plan. He wanted Fushan to secretly break into his house, first kill his wife Suni with a weapon, then stage the scene as a burglary followed by witness elimination. This way, local police would view it as a theft murder case. As long as Fushan cleaned the scene thoroughly, police wouldn't be able to investigate them. Therefore, on August 13, 2010, Zijun, while away, once again directed Fushan to act. Around 1 a.m. that day, Fushan took Zijun's house keys, intending to quietly open the door. But unexpectedly, the vigilant Suni had locked the door from inside. The third attempt ended in failure. Time passed to October 2010, seeing that the 3 insurance policies he had bought for Suni were about to expire, and the chance to receive the huge compensation was about to slip away. Zijun became increasingly anxious. After 3 previous failed attempts, Zijun realized that having Lu Fushan secretly break in was no longer feasible. So he changed the plan, this time deciding to let Fushan enter his house openly. On October 25, 2010, Zijun once again used the excuse of going for medical treatment, traveling alone to the Guangxi City area to create an alibi for the time. Before leaving, he specifically instructed his wife, "Tonight, a friend will come to pick up a bank card. I've left it in the drawer under the coffee table in the living room. Just give it to him." At this point, Shani didn't think much of it, completely trusting her husband's arrangement. And this seemingly normal arrangement would create a perfect opportunity for Fushan to strike. Additionally, Zijun told Lu Fushan to definitely wear large-sized shoes, saying this could mislead the police investigation. However, when preparing the shoes, Lu Fushan found that large shoes were easy to slip off, so he had to choose a pair of small shoes that didn't fit. Around 9 p.m. that night, Fushan wore a backpack prepared to go to Shani's house. In the backpack, he had prepared an iron hammer and rope. Following Zijun's instructions, Lu Fushan skillfully avoided the surveillance cameras around and arrived at Shani's house to ring the doorbell. After entering, Shani welcomed Fushan warmly without any suspicion. But just as she bent down to get the bank card, Fushan quickly pulled out the iron hammer, striking hard at the back of her head. After a loud noise, Shani fell to the ground before she could react. At this point, Fushan took out the rope to finish off Shani. The frenzied murder happened so quickly and unexpectedly that poor Zhang Shani, until her final moment, never knew that all of this was a long-planned conspiracy by the husband she trusted. After interrogation, Fushan pointed out the location where he disposed of the murder weapons, and the police successfully found the hammer. On September 23, 2011, the Enchi Autonomous Prefecture Intermediate People's Court issued its first instance verdict. Defendant Liang Zijun was sentenced to death for the crime of intentional homicide. Defendant Lu Fushan was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve for the crime of intentional homicide. Next, we'll explore a case that occurred on Jimodo Island in Yosa City, Honan Province, South Korea. The main characters are a remarried couple. The husband, Park Tae-hyun, 50, worked as an insurance consultant. His wife, Kim Soo-hyun, 47, was a restaurant server. The couple lived in downtown Yosu. One day in 2018, they drove to Japu village on Jimodo Island for a trip when tragedy struck. At 10:56 p.m. on Monday, December 31st, the Yosu 119 Safety Center received a desperate emergency call. On the other end was a woman's panicked voice screaming, "Help me. I can't open the door or windows. It's too dark. I can't see anything. The car is sinking. It's sinking." The dispatcher urgently asked for the woman's location, but she was clearly too panicked to hear the operator's questions, only repeatedly asking what to do. The call lasted about 4 minutes before the woman stopped speaking. After that, the sound of gurgling water could be heard before the call disconnected. The dispatcher realized the situation was dire and quickly traced the call location through the phone signal. They quickly determined the call came from a dock near Jipu village in central Jimodo Island. The rescue team immediately departed for the scene. When they arrived, the scene was crowded with curious locals buzzing with conversation. A man sat crying desperately on the dock. It was Taeyun. Seeing the rescue team, Taeyun grabbed onto them like a lifeline, saying in a hoarse voice, "Please save my wife." She fell into the sea. Suyeon, Taeyun's wife, was 47 years old, born into an ordinary family in Yosu City with several siblings. She left school early to work and met her first husband through friends' introductions. From her first marriage, she had a son and daughter, both living with her. Suyeon was working at a restaurant in Yosu, and it was here that she happened to meet Taeyun, a single father 3 years her senior. Their conversations seemed endless, and they gradually developed feelings for each other. On December 6, 2018, Suyeon divorced her first husband, but just 4 days later, she registered her marriage with Taeyun. After holding a simple wedding, they began their new life together. Initially, everything was developing positively, but unexpectedly, less than a month after marriage, Suyeon met with disaster. At the dock, Taeyun sobbed, describing Suyeon as a gentle woman who always cared for him. They had worked hard to build their new home together, never expecting such a tragic accident. The rescue workers patiently consoled Taeyun, though they knew that with the time that had passed, his wife's chances of survival were very slim. Taeyun explained that he and his wife had only been married a short time and were still in their honeymoon period. That afternoon, the last day of 2018, his wife had suggested going to Jimodo Island to watch the first sunrise of the new year. So the couple drove from downtown to Jimodo Island. They visited Ichun Dock and Yuhak Dock for sightseeing, then moved on to Jipu village. Instead of booking a hotel, they decided to drive to the dock near the village and sleep in the car while waiting for the New Year's sunrise. By 10 p.m., Suyeon was sleeping in the passenger seat. Taeyun wasn't sleepy, so he went out to smoke. During that time, he checked if the tires had enough air. When he reached the right rear tire, for some unknown reason, the car suddenly began slowly sliding forward. He realized something was wrong and quickly tried to grab the door handle, but it was futile. It turned out their parking spot wasn't level with a slope nearby, and soon the car had slid to the sloped area. He rushed to the passenger side, trying to open the door to wake his deeply sleeping wife, but found the doors were locked and couldn't be opened. At this point, Taeyun was banging on the car window and calling Suyeon's name, but his wife couldn't hear him at all. Thus, he was forced to watch helplessly as his wife and the car slid into the sea. In that moment of panic, he completely froze, not knowing what to do. The car slowly sank, each moment passing like a nightmare that he could see clearly. He stood on the dock screaming desperately, hoping his shouts might wake Suyeon, and she would find a way to escape. When he heard faint cries for help coming from the sinking car, he jumped into the sea to save his wife. But because he couldn't swim, and with the pitch-black night making it impossible to see the water's surface, after several failed attempts, had to return to the dock in despair. Taeyun tried to call for help, but realized his phone was left in the car. He stood on the dock shouting loudly, hoping someone nearby would hear. But it was already past 10 p.m., and there was no one around the dock. With no choice, he had to run toward the village for help, finally running into a guest house to seek assistance. With the guest house owner's help, he called the 119 rescue team. When he returned to the dock, the car had completely disappeared beneath the dark water, with no trace of his wife. Realizing nothing could be done, he collapsed onto the dock, sobbing in desperation. The bad news spread quickly, and villagers began gathering. However, on that pitch-black night, no one dared risk going into the sea for a rescue. Everyone stood helplessly, waiting for professional rescue workers to arrive. As soon as the rescue team arrived at the scene, they discovered several suspicious details. First, the protective railings on both sides of the dock were very sturdy, but one section was severely deformed as if it had taken a strong impact. A fisherman working there confirmed the railing had been intact before. Even more suspiciously, although Tae-yoon claimed he had jumped into the sea trying to save his wife, his clothes were strangely dry. From these irregularities, the rescue workers formed a bold hypothesis. They suspected this wasn't simply an accidental tragedy, but possibly a carefully orchestrated plan by Tae-yoon. They immediately notified the police. Receiving the report, police quickly arrived at the scene. When Tae-yoon saw the police appear, he showed momentary surprise but quickly regained composure and declared his willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Faced with police questioning, Tae-yoon firmly maintained his initial statement, insisting his wife's accident was unintentional. When asked about the deformed dock railing, Tae-yoon claimed no knowledge of this, suggesting it may have been damaged before they arrived. Later, police visited the guest house where he had called for help to investigate. The guest house owner's testimony raised more suspicions. According to the owner, when Tae-yoon appeared to ask for help calling rescue services, his demeanor was extremely calm, showing no signs of panic or worry. He even casually walked around the guest house, appearing no different from a normal guest aside from requesting to use the phone. This behavior made police increasingly suspicious. It was hard to understand how someone witnessing their spouse in life-threatening danger could maintain such unusual composure. This clearly wasn't the natural reaction of a husband in that situation. When confronted, Tae-yoon defended himself, saying his wandering around the guest house was to look for any rescue equipment that might be useful. He insisted he was actually very panicked, but tried to suppress showing it externally. In such an emergency situation, I had to stay calm. Otherwise, who could my wife rely on? Tae-yoon explained. However, these justifications failed to convince the police. To uncover the truth, they decided to check surveillance camera footage from the dock. Unfortunately, the cameras didn't capture the car sliding into the sea, nor the moment Tae-yoon allegedly jumped in to save his wife. The only thing captured was Tae-yoon walking alone toward the guest house at 10:57 p.m. that night. Through the surveillance footage, police saw him leisurely walking toward the village, completely unhurried. His clothes appearing dry, as if deliberately taking his time, purposely not wanting rescue teams to arrive too quickly. Regarding this, Tae-yoon explained that he had never been to Jimodo Island before, wasn't familiar with the terrain, and additionally, it was dark and he couldn't see the road clearly, which is why he walked so slowly. During the investigation into the suspect's background, police learned that Tae-yoon, age 50, working as an insurance consultant, had a failed previous marriage. From this marriage, he had 3 daughters. Initially, the family lived a modest but peaceful life. However, gradually, his ex-wife began feeling dissatisfied with his earning capacity, frequently complaining that he couldn't provide a better life for her and their children. Financial conflicts became increasingly intense, leading to endless arguments. Finally, the marriage ended and the 3 daughters lived with Tae-yoon. Wanting to provide a better life for his children, Tae-yoon constantly changed jobs, from server to salesperson. However, in December 2012, desperate with debt reaching $80 million, approximately $61,500, he and a friend committed a robbery of $52 million, approximately $40,000 in Yesu, and were quickly arrested by police. When arrested, Tae-yoon confessed his crimes frankly. He explained that with 3 school-aged children, tuition fees were an unavoidable burden, and he only resorted to crime out of desperation. For the theft charge, he was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. In 2014, after completing his prison sentence, Tae-yoon survived on temporary jobs and driving tourist buses. In May 2018, he applied for an insurance consultant position, but was rejected due to his criminal record. Later, he applied for a similar position at another company and was hired. After joining the company, Tae-yoon focused on learning the business through training programs, quickly mastering insurance product details and compensation clauses. Notably, he actively researched potential customer information and skillfully created chance meetings for approaching them. Through these efforts, he rapidly became proficient at his job and achieved impressive sales results. In late September 2018, Tae-yoon noticed Soo-yeon, a potential customer on his insurance prospect list. Discovering she worked at a restaurant he frequently visited, he meticulously planned to accidentally meet and approach her under the guise of insurance consultation. Learning she was separated and preparing for divorce, Tae-yoon became increasingly active in maintaining contact, from travel opportunities to attractive insurance package offers. This strategy proved effective as they quickly developed romantic feelings for each other. On October 26th, under Tae-yoon's persuasion, Soo-hyun purchased a total of 3 insurance products, including 2 policies with coverage of $1 billion and $1, approximately $770,000. On November 9th, he had her buy dental insurance. And on November 20th, she purchased another policy worth $100 billion and $1, approximately $77,000. At this point, being deeply in love, Soo-hyun had no suspicions and continuously signed insurance contracts following Tae-yoon's sweet talk. To create an impression of financial capability, he sold his old car to buy a used luxury car, the same fateful vehicle that would later sink into the sea. Not stopping there, Tae-yoon painted a beautiful future vision by promising to buy land on a beautiful island and build a house for their retirement together. Completely convinced by Tae-yoon's promises, just 4 days after finalizing her divorce, Soo-hyun hastily married him. Immediately afterward, from December 12th to 13th, Tae-yoon began suspicious activities. First using Soo-hyun's name to buy damage insurance for his car, then changing the beneficiary in all her insurance contracts to his name. He even secretly transferred the beneficiary rights to his brother without informing Soo-hyun. During the investigation, police questioned Soo-hyun's 2 children about their stepfather. Her older son said his stepfather was very good, often taking care of him, treating him to fancy restaurants whenever he had free time, and taking him to interesting places. He quite liked his stepfather. After his mother remarried, she seemed much happier. Before the incident, his mother had been acting normally, with no strange behavior. Soo-hyun's younger daughter also said she had a good impression of her stepfather. Initially, she worried that after her mother remarried, she might pay less attention to her brother and herself, but that wasn't the case. Their stepfather was meticulous, sometimes even more attentive to her than her mother. Despite Soo-hyun's children portraying Tae-yoon as a devoted stepfather, police remained cautious. They believed the brief time since the marriage wasn't sufficient to evaluate Tae-yoon's true character. In further investigation, police discovered that after marriage, Tae-yoon had changed the beneficiary of 6 insurance policies Soo-hyun had purchased to his name. The total coverage of these 6 contracts amounted to $1.25 billion, approximately $962,000, primarily related to death by accident, traffic accidents, and similar circumstances. Police believed this was Tae-yoon's motive. He had carefully planned this accident, aiming to collect this enormous insurance payout. As an insurance consultant, he understood every insurance clause in detail. After coincidentally meeting Soo-hyun, he had targeted her insurance policies. He hadn't truly loved her, but pretended to pursue her, quickly marrying her after gaining her trust and rushing to change the beneficiary names to his own. After everything was prepared, he lured Soo-hyun to Jemodo Island to execute his sinister plan. Police also learned that Tae-yoon lived modestly, had 3 daughters to support, faced significant life pressures, and struggled financially. Someone had seen him write a note in his phone titled, "My Life Philosophy," which included the line, "I don't want to pass poverty down to my children." Although all clues pointed to Tae-yoon murdering his wife, he continued to deny it, instead accusing the police of making wild speculations without concrete evidence in their attempt to blame him. Subsequently, police questioned Tae-yoon's 3 daughters. They all stated that their father was an honest, upright person. Although he had made mistakes in the past, these were due to life's pressures and didn't mean he was a bad person. Since their parents' divorce, their father had shouldered all their living expenses. He was frugal with himself and had never mistreated them. By the afternoon following the incident, police had recovered the car from the seabed. It was a silver gray 2008 Genesis. Upon inspection, the front windshield was completely shattered. The rear had clear impact damage, and the trunk was open. Soo-hyun was found in the passenger seat, showing no signs of life. 2 phones were found in the car, one belonging to Soo-hyun and one to Tae-yoon, both unusable due to water damage. The forensic report showed Soo-hyun died from drowning, with time of death around 11 p.m. on December 31st. After recovering the car, police quickly discovered suspicious points. According to Tae-yoon, the car should have slid into the waterfront first, so the broken windshield could be explained by water pressure or underwater rocks. But if the rear entered the water last, why was there impact damage? And why was the trunk open? Additionally, police found another suspicious detail in the car. The gear shifter was in neutral, and this was unusual. Tae-yoon had parked at the dock to wait for sunrise. Leaving the car in neutral would risk it rolling, unless that was intentional. During police questioning, Tae-yoon offered an explanation for the sequence of events. According to him, the car was initially parked at the dock's edge, as it was an ideal spot for watching the sunrise. However, his wife felt unsafe there and asked him to back up. During this backing up process, he accidentally hit the protective railing, causing its deformation. He habitually left the car in neutral and got out to check the situation. At that moment, the car unexpectedly slid into the sea. As for the open trunk, he suggested it might have been forced open by water pressure as the car sank. However, this testimony revealed serious contradictions with his previous statements. Notably, in his first statement, he firmly claimed no knowledge of the damaged railing, but now admitted he had backed into it. This inconsistency in his testimony further increased suspicions about his role in the incident. Significantly, Tae-yoon had worked as a tourist bus driver, indicating his driving skills were excellent, and he would have known the danger of leaving a car in neutral. Such a basic error seemed unlikely from an experienced driver. Regarding this, Tae-yoon explained that he hadn't known an accident would happen to his wife. If he had, he would certainly have put the car in park. He said he hadn't thought much about it at the time, believing that getting out to check the car briefly would be fine with the car in neutral. Who could have known that one moment of carelessness would lead to tragedy? He suggested strong sea winds combined with the slope might have caused the car to slide gradually. This explanation didn't reduce police suspicions. There was another suspicious detail about the car. One of the rear windows was open. Measurements showed a 2.75-inch gap. If all the windows had been closed when the car fell into the sea, it wouldn't have sunk immediately. However, with an open window, water would quickly flood the passenger compartment, causing the car to sink rapidly. At the time, Soo-hyun was in the passenger seat. If she had felt hot and wanted to open a window, she would likely have opened her own window. But when the car was recovered, the passenger window was tightly closed while the rear window was slightly open. This couldn't help but raise suspicions. Police suspected Tae-hyun had deliberately opened the rear window to make the car sink faster. But Tae-hyun expressed outrage at this speculation, saying the open rear window was his wife's idea. He claimed she had initially opened her passenger window because she felt hot, but later closed it due to strong winds, and asked him to open the rear window instead. This way, they could have some ventilation without too much cold air. Although Tae-hyun tried to deny his crime, by this point, all evidence suggested Soo-hyun's death was not a simple accident. With a clear motive established, police arrested him on suspicion of intentional murder. According to the investigation results, on the night of the incident, Tae-hyun had parked the car on the dock slope, used poor air circulation as an excuse to open the rear window, and then had intimate relations with Soo-hyun in the car. Afterward, claiming discomfort, he backed up the car, saying they would go to a hotel. During this process, he deliberately hit the protective railing, then used the pretext of checking the damage to put the car in neutral without engaging the parking brake. He got out of the car alone for inspection, causing Soo-hyun and the vehicle to slide down the docks ramped into the sea. 1 year after the incident, the trial opened at the Sunshin branch of the Gwangjo District Court. At trial, the prosecutor argued that defendant Park Tae-hyun, due to financial difficulties, particularly the pressure of supporting his daughters after divorce, had planned this incident. He murdered Soo-hyun, disguising it as an accident to fraudulently collect insurance money. On December 31st, 2018, Tae-hyun had lured the victim to Japu Village dock on Gumido Island under the pretense of watching the sunrise. He then deliberately backed into the dock's protective railing, shifted to neutral, and got out to check the situation. Subsequently, Tae-hyun pushed the car from behind, causing it to slide into the sea. The defense argued that while Tae-hyun did have debt problems and wasn't wealthy, his situation wasn't desperate enough to commit murder for money. Moreover, there was no evidence showing he had pushed the car after exiting it. They suggested the car might have accidentally slid into the sea due to strong winds. The prosecutor maintained that Tae-hyun's financial difficulties were his motive for the crime. Additionally, as an experienced driver, leaving the car in neutral was clearly intentional. Opening a rear window in cold winter weather was highly unusual. Latest investigation results showed the defendant had visited the scene on December 24th, a week before the incident. This behavior raised further suspicions. The car couldn't have slid into the sea without external force, further proving the unnatural nature of the accident. After a period of trial, the court found defendant Taehyun guilty of intentional murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. After the trial concluded, Taehyun, dissatisfied with the verdict, appealed to the Gwangju High Court. At the appellate court, defendant Taehyun declared his complete innocence, stating he had never wronged his wife and wouldn't scheme such an act for insurance money. Though he had financial difficulties, he wouldn't do something so crazy. The car's slide into the sea could have been caused by multiple factors, and it couldn't be proven that he had pushed it. According to the police simulation experiment at the scene of the situation of a car in N-gear sliding into the sea, there are 3 cases. The first case is the car is parked on a flat surface. If it slides, it is because someone intentionally pushed the car. The second case is the car is parked on a slope, and as soon as the handbrake is released, it will slide. The last case is the car was originally parked on a flat surface, but the person in the passenger seat moved the position, causing the car to start sliding. Through these 3 simulations, it was shown that the critical point for the car to slide was not fixed. The appellate judge concluded that defendant Park Taehyun lacked sufficient financial motive to murder Soo-hyun, and there were multiple possible scenarios for the car sliding into the sea. They couldn't definitively prove Taehyun had pushed the car. After deliberation, the court ruled that while Taehyun wasn't guilty of intentional murder, he was guilty of negligent homicide. Based on the Special Act on the Treatment of Traffic Accidents, the appeals court overturned Taehyun's life sentence, and instead sentenced him to 3 years in prison. Still dissatisfied, Taehyun appealed to the South Korean Supreme Court. Ultimately, the Supreme Court overturned the appellate verdict and declared Taehyun not guilty. The justices argued that while a defendant could be convicted based on circumstantial evidence alone, such evidence must be without any reasonable doubt. The defendant hadn't been the primary decision-maker about the entire Jeomo-do Island trip. The intimate relations in the car appeared to be at the victim's request, rather than the defendant's initiative. Before the accident, the defendant's health wasn't good, showing signs of dizziness and wanting to go to a hotel to rest. There were indirect facts suggesting the accident wasn't intentional. Therefore, the evidence presented by the prosecution didn't meet the required standard, leaving room for reasonable doubt. Additionally, there was no other evidence that could convict the defendant. After being freed, Taehyun immediately took the insurance contracts to the insurance company, demanding compensation but was denied. The insurance company believed Taehyun likely murdered Soo-hyun, arguing her death wasn't accidental, and therefore refusing to pay. Subsequently, Taehyun sued the insurance company. On December 12, 2022, the trial opened at the Seoul Central District Court. At trial, the defendant insurance company pointed out that although Taehyun had been found not guilty, his changing of beneficiary information in many of Soo-hyun's insurance contracts was highly suspicious. Additionally, given the suspicious circumstances of Soo-hyun's death, they couldn't process the compensation. Plaintiff Taehyun argued that the insurance company was trying to avoid payment by using this as an excuse. He had been found not guilty in the previous drowning case, and the insurance company had no right to use that as grounds for denying compensation. After a period of trial, the court ruled in favor of the insurance company. Taehyun appealed. Finally, the appeals court reversed the decision, ruling against the insurance company and ordering them to pay all insurance benefits to Taehyun. A year later, Taehyun received the enormous insurance payout, totaling 1.25 billion won, approximately $962,000. Some believe Taehyun's purpose was clear from the beginning. He had meticulously planned everything, from changing insurance beneficiaries to his wife's accident, calculating each step carefully. As an insurance consultant, he understood legal loopholes and ultimately succeeded in receiving the massive insurance payout as intended. During this process, he deliberately hit the protective railing, then used the pretext of checking the damage to put the car in neutral without engaging the parking brake. He got out of the car alone for inspection, causing Soo-hyun and the vehicle to slide down the dock's ramp into the sea. 1 year after the incident, the trial opened at the Suncheon branch of the Gwangju District Court. At trial, the prosecutor argued that defendant Park Taehyun, due to financial difficulties, particularly the pressure of supporting his daughters after divorce, had planned this incident. He murdered Soo-hyun, disguising it as an accident to fraudulently collect insurance money. On December 31, 2018, Taehyun had lured the victim to Japu village dock on Gumado Island under the pretense of watching the sunrise. He then deliberately backed into the dock's protective railing, shifted to neutral, and got out to check the situation. Subsequently, Tae-hyun pushed the car from behind, causing it to slide into the sea. The defense argued that while Tae-hyun did have debt problems and wasn't wealthy, his situation wasn't desperate enough to commit murder for money. Moreover, there was no evidence showing he had pushed the car after exiting it. They suggested the car might have accidentally slid into the sea due to strong winds. The prosecutor maintained that Tae-hyun's financial difficulties were his motive for the crime. Additionally, as an experienced driver, leaving the car in neutral was clearly intentional. Opening a rear window in cold winter weather was highly unusual. Latest investigation results showed the defendant had visited the scene on December 24th, a week before the incident. This behavior raised further suspicions. The car couldn't have slid into the sea without external force, further proving the unnatural nature of the accident. After a period of trial, the court found defendant Tae-hyun guilty of intentional murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. After the trial concluded, Tae-hyun, dissatisfied with the verdict, appealed to the Gwangju High Court. At the appellate court, defendant Tae-hyun declared his complete innocence, stating he had never wronged his wife and wouldn't scheme such an act for insurance money. Though he had financial difficulties, he wouldn't do something so crazy. The car's slide into the sea could have been caused by multiple factors, and it couldn't be proven that he had pushed it. According to the police simulation experiment at the scene of the situation of a car in N gear sliding into the sea, there are 3 cases. The first case is the car is parked on a flat surface. If it slides, it is because someone intentionally pushed the car. The second case is the car is parked on a slope, and as soon as the handbrake is released, it will slide. The last case is the car was originally parked on a flat surface, but the person in the passenger seat moved the position, causing the car to start sliding. Through these 3 simulations, it was shown that the critical point for the car to slide was not fixed. The appellate judge concluded that defendant Park Tae-hyun lacked sufficient financial motive to murder Soo-hyun, and there were multiple possible scenarios for the car sliding into the sea. They couldn't definitively prove Tae-hyun had pushed the car. After deliberation, the court ruled that while Tae-hyun wasn't guilty of intentional murder, he was guilty of negligent homicide. Based on the Special Act on the Treatment of Traffic Accidents, the appeals court overturned Tae-hyun's life sentence and instead sentenced him to 3 years in prison. Still dissatisfied, Tae-hyun appealed to the South Korean Supreme Court. Ultimately, the Supreme Court overturned the appellate verdict and declared Tae-hyun not guilty. The justices argued that while a defendant could be convicted based on circumstantial evidence alone, such evidence must be without any reasonable doubt. The defendant hadn't been the primary decision-maker about the entire Jimoto Island trip. The intimate relations in the car appeared to be at the victim's request, rather than the defendant's initiative. Before the accident, the defendant's health wasn't good, showing signs of dizziness and wanting to go to a hotel to rest. There were indirect facts suggesting the accident wasn't intentional. Therefore, the evidence presented by the prosecution didn't meet the required standard, leaving room for reasonable doubt. Additionally, there was no other evidence that could convict the defendant. After being freed, Tae-hyun immediately took the insurance contracts to the insurance company, demanding compensation but was denied. The insurance company believed Tae-hyun likely murdered Soo-hyun, arguing her death wasn't accidental, and therefore refusing to pay. Subsequently, Tae-hyun sued the insurance company. On December 12, 2022, the trial opened at the Seoul Central District Court. At trial, the defendant insurance company pointed out that although Tae-hyun had been found not guilty, his changing of beneficiary information in many of Soo-hyun's insurance contracts was highly suspicious. Additionally, given the suspicious circumstances of Soo-hyun's death, they couldn't process the compensation. Plaintiff Tae-hyun argued that the insurance company was trying to avoid payment by using this as an excuse. He had been found not guilty in the previous drowning case, and the insurance company had no right to use that as grounds for denying compensation. After a period of trial, the court ruled in favor of the insurance company. Tae-hyun appealed. Finally, the appeals court reversed the decision, ruling against the insurance company and ordering them to pay all insurance benefits to Tae-hyun. A year later, Tae-hyun received the enormous insurance payout, totaling $1.25 billion, approximately $962,000. Some believe Tae-hyun's purpose was clear from the beginning. He had meticulously planned everything, from changing insurance beneficiaries to his wife's accident, calculating each step carefully. As an insurance consultant, he understood legal loopholes and ultimately succeeded in receiving the massive insurance payout as intended. Others believed Taehyun was innocent, arguing he alone couldn't have planned such a complex and sophisticated insurance fraud scheme. Perhaps everything was just a coincidence, and Taehyun merely happened to become the final beneficiary. Convicting him might have been somewhat forced. Ultimately, the South Korean judiciary seemed to think so too. Story 2. We'll explore a case that occurred in Zillenhat City, Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, which shocked China due to the killer's extraordinary intelligence and frightening talents. In this case, the victims were merely pawns in his twisted game. This tragic story began at 4 p.m. on January 2nd, 2024, when the Zillenhat Police Department received a panic phone call from a man who said, "Hello, police. My sister has just been murdered. The killer stabbed her multiple times. Her name is Yuping, and she lives in Jiajia Township. Please send investigators here quickly." About 10 minutes after receiving the report, police arrived at the scene. When they got there, they found villagers gathered around the house where the murder took place, buzzing with speculation. After preliminary investigation at the scene, police discovered the victim was a woman around 50 years old named Yuping. When forensic doctors examined the body, they found multiple stab wounds with blood covering the entire body. The crime scene was in the bedroom, with blood staining the nearby bedding, a heartbreaking sight. The time of death was estimated to be around 3 p.m. that same day, as the blood was still wet and the victim's body was still warm. The person who reported the crime was Yuping's younger brother, Jean Yute. His house was just over 300 feet from his sister's. They were essentially neighbors. According to Yute, that morning while he was working, he received a phone call from Yuping's youngest son, Wang Chung, asking him to check on his mother. Upon receiving his nephew's call, he immediately went to his sister's house. However, Yute never expected to find his sister murdered so brutally. Ping was already 50 years old. He couldn't imagine what kind of conflict could have led someone to act so viciously against her. After thoroughly inspecting the house, police found signs of searching in the closet and drawers. The scene appeared to be a robbery homicide. Additionally, police found a blood-stained shirt and pair of men's sneakers in the living room. According to witness statements, only Yuping was home at the time. So whose shirt and shoes were these? Could the killer really have been foolish enough to leave his belongings at the crime scene? When police checked the windows and main entrance of the house, they found no signs of damage or scratches from forced entry. This suggested the killer had entered the house easily. Therefore, they suspected it was someone familiar with the family. Beyond these initial clues, police continued investigating the scene. Other officers questioned UT to learn more about the victim's family. UT explained that his sister's family had 4 members: her husband Wang Ji, age 55, their daughter Wang Jing, age 26, and their youngest son Wang Cheng, age 22. They were a happy, harmonious family who often helped those in need. We've lived near each other for a long time, and Yuping never had conflicts with anyone. If there were any issues, they would have been with her husband Wang Ji. He often competed with other construction contractors. I don't know if he had conflicts with anyone. Yuping was just a housewife who took care of her husband and children. How could she have conflicts with anyone? Zhang Yud added, "I don't understand why Wang Cheng called me today to check on his mother. There must be something more to this story. Wang Cheng is on his way home now. Questioning him will help clarify things." While team members were examining the crime scene, Shueping's 2 children, Wang Jing and Wang Cheng, arrived home. When they saw their mother lying in a pool of blood, they burst into tears and rushed toward her. But investigators held them back to allow forensic doctors to continue examining and collecting evidence from the scene. They could only stand at a distance, watching their mother's motionless body in anguish. Another young man had come home with them, Wang Jing's boyfriend, Zhong Lin. Though they weren't married yet, Zhong Lin appeared almost as devastated as Shueping's own children. After giving them time to process their grief, police questioned them about what had happened that made Wang Cheng call his uncle Yute to check on his mother. The sister, Wang Jing, revealed that around 11 a.m. that day, while working at her company, she received a message from a man named Zhong Bing. The message contained just one line: "The game has just begun." Wang Jing found this strange and didn't understand what was happening. She thought he must be joking, or had messaged the wrong number. Wang Jing explained that this person had visited her home several times and was supposedly working at the traffic police department, as well as being a business partner of her father, Wang Ji. Wang Ji was a construction contractor, and working with him were his niece Shui Ru and her husband, Wang Jun. About 20 minutes later, he sent Wang Jing another message saying, "I've kidnapped your father. Prepare the ransom money, or he will be killed. The amount is 1 million yuan, approximately $235,000, and don't report this to the police." He also sent a bank account number for the transfer. At this point, Wang Jing wasn't sure if this was real or fake, so she tried calling her father, but he didn't answer. Worried about her father, Wang Jing took leave from work to go home and check if Wang Ji was there. When she arrived home, only her mother and brother were there, and they said Wang Ji had gone out that morning to meet with business partners. Wang Jing immediately called back the kidnapper, who then sent her an address for the money drop at Jiaku Park. Wang Jing and Wang Chung prepared the money and went to the location specified by the kidnapper, but when they tried calling him there, he didn't answer. Then he sent another message saying their cousin, Shui Ru, and her husband, Wang Jing, had also been kidnapped and he needed more money. At that moment, she unexpectedly received a message from her boyfriend, Zhang Lin, saying someone had kidnapped her father and was demanding a ransom at Jiakou Park. Wang Jing told him they were already there. At this point, the siblings suddenly realized that usually their mother would call constantly if anything was wrong. But strangely, today she hadn't called at all. When Wang Jing tried calling their mother and couldn't reach her, he asked Uncle Yute, who lived nearby, to check on her. They never imagined their beloved mother would be murdered in her own home. From this information, police recognized this was a serious and complex case. However, police found it very strange. How would a kidnapper use a SIM card registered in his real name to send ransom demands? He was even someone known to the victim's family and provided his own bank account. Wasn't this essentially announcing his crimes? Secondly, one person couldn't possibly kidnap 3 people simultaneously. This suggested either a criminal group was involved or he had kidnapped them one by one. More importantly, police believe this crime had been premeditated, because when the perpetrator killed Shui Ping, he must have known Wang Jing and Wang Chung weren't home, allowing him to quickly carry out the murder. Could the killer be Zhang Bing? Did he deliberately lure Wang Jing and Wang Chung away before killing Shui Ping? Next, police immediately formed 2 task forces. One continued investigating the crime scene, while the other worked to confirm Zhang Bing's true identity and plan the search for his kidnapping victims. Based on the bank account name, investigators discovered Zhang Bing didn't work at the traffic police department, as he claimed, but was instead an unemployed drifter living in Zillenhat who had never married. Police immediately launched a large-scale search in the surrounding area. With the suspect's photo, officers questioned people on the streets, checked guest records at hotels, and traced surveillance camera footage along major routes. They also monitored train stations, common escape routes for criminals. While reviewing surveillance footage near the crime scene, officers spotted Zhang Bing walking on a street about 300 feet from the scene. This increased suspicions that he had killed Shui Ping. During the search for the suspect, on January 4th, officers discovered Zhang Bing was staying at a hotel in the city, and the front desk staff reported he hadn't checked out yet. Police quickly organized a team to apprehend him. However, when they broke down the door, investigators were confronted with a cold corpse lying on the bed. Officers initially thought it was the suspect. After identification, the body in the room was confirmed to be Wang Jun, the husband of Shui Ru, Wang Jing's cousin. After conducting an autopsy, forensic experts estimated the time of death to be around 9 a.m. on January 2nd, before Shui Ping's murder. The victim had died from a severe blow to the head. So this was the room Zhang Bing had rented, using his ID, and inside was Wang Jun's body. It seemed he really had kidnapped 3 people as claimed. With Wang Jun dead, everyone worried about the safety of Shui Ru and Wang Ji. When police questioned the hotel's front desk staff about the guests, they said he had rented the room around 8 a.m. on January 2nd, paid for 10 days in advance, and requested that no one disturb the room, so they hadn't checked on it. This confirmed Zhang Bing was a serial killer operating in the area. The investigation team needed to quickly locate him. However, the bad news wasn't over. On January 5th, police discovered Zhang Bing had used his driver's license to rent another hotel room about 150 feet from the first hotel. When police checked the room, they found Shui Ru's lifeless body on the floor. After forensic examination, they determined she died from mechanical asphyxiation, with no other wounds and no signs of sexual assault. Time of death was estimated to be January 2nd. Combined with the check-in time, police deduced that Shuiru was killed about an hour after her husband Wang Jun. By this point, the killer had murdered 3 people in one day. He had chosen different times throughout January 2nd to attack his victims. The only person still unaccounted for was Wang Ji. Was he still alive or dead? Of the 3 kidnapped people, the killer had already murdered 2. At this point, everyone understood Wang Ji's chances of survival were slim. The series of murders in the city caused tremendous panic and fear among residents, who were also outraged by the killer's cruel actions. They promised to immediately report any sightings of the fugitive to police. Zhang Bing's photo was distributed through media channels, so citizens could stay alert and report any information about this dangerous suspect. Continuing the investigation, police collected all surveillance camera footage from across the city for review. They also began investigating the victims' social connections more deeply. According to statements from Zhonglin and Wang Jing, Wang Ji, Wang Jun, and Shuiru had met with Zhongbing to discuss a highway construction project, and Zhongbing had been introduced by Wang Jing's boyfriend, Zhonglin. The 2 men frequently communicated and met, so how could Zhonglin not have known Zhongbing's true background? It seemed illogical. Could Zhongbing have been hired by Wang Ji's highway project competitors to kill them? But what puzzled police was that these people had known each other before. Why would they turn against each other now? Had there been conflicts between them? And why was Zhu Aping, who had no connection to the bidding project, murdered so brutally? To answer these questions, police needed to quickly capture Zhongbing and bring him to justice. After extensive investigation, police finally spotted Zhongbing early morning on April 10th. A taxi driver reported taking a passenger matching Zhongbing's description to Beijing. After reviewing the taxi's camera footage, investigators confirmed it was indeed Zhongbing. Inner Mongolia police immediately requested assistance from Beijing police to search for the suspect. They also dispatched specialized police forces to Beijing to apprehend this dangerous killer. With Beijing police's support, Inner Mongolia police quickly identified Zhongbing's hideout. However, when police arrived, had already fled. They only found items like iodine solution and bandages in the room. Beijing, being China's capital, has a dense population and complex transportation network. If the killer was hiding there, capturing him would be much more difficult. Therefore, Inner Mongolia police continued cooperating with Beijing and Hubei police to implement the 3-sided control measure, determined not to let the killer escape. After checking networks on major routes across all regions, they finally found Zhongbing's trail. He was in a taxi heading northeast. Police suspected Zhongbing was fleeing toward the border. Consequently, they immediately sent search notices to 3 northeastern provinces and border police to prevent the killer's successful escape. At this time, Zhang Lin, Wang Jing's boyfriend who had been assisting the investigation, suddenly provided important information. He warned that Zhongbing was carrying dangerous weapons, so police should be careful. Though not yet married to Wang Jing, Zhang Lin seemed deeply concerned about her family's tragedy. He was very interested in the clues police had gathered and always enthusiastically supported the investigation team. Upon receiving Zhonglin's information, local police forces prepared themselves with full equipment to handle any unexpected situations this dangerous criminal might create. To avoid alerting the suspect and risking the taxi driver's life, police closely followed the taxi carrying the suspect, waiting for the right moment to make an arrest. At 2 a.m. on April 16th, thanks to surveillance cameras at a highway toll station, police spotted Zhongbing sleeping in the taxi. This presented a perfect opportunity to arrest him. When the taxi stopped at the toll station, officers quickly subdued and successfully captured the dangerous killer Zhongbing. What surprised the police was that he showed no resistance and accepted arrest easily. After his arrest, police transported Zhongbing back to Inner Mongolia for further investigation. As soon as interrogation began, he immediately confessed, claiming he had planned and carried out everything alone, with no one else involved. However, police noticed that Zhongbing's confession seemed to be protecting someone who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. Why did he insist so strongly on emphasizing that he planned and executed everything alone? To uncover the hidden truth, police continued their interrogation. When police asked about Wang Ji's whereabouts, Zhongbing confessed that he had killed him and burned the body with gasoline. When police went to the location where Zhongbing said he had killed Wang Ji, they found only remaining ashes. When police asked Zhongbing why he killed these victims, he gave a reason. "I took revenge for my girlfriend. so his motive was revenge for his girlfriend. But who was this girlfriend? What conflict did she have with the victims? He said his girlfriend's name was Xiaolan. They had known each other for 2 years, but had never met in person because Zhongbing met her online, and she was a Chinese American living in the United States. They only communicated by phone. Zhongbing claimed that his girlfriend's family had once been wealthy, but had faced sudden misfortunes. Her father was imprisoned, and her mother died from illness in America. Xiaolan had told Zhongbing that she had lost all her family members, and he was now her only support. After taking care of her mother's funeral, she planned to return to Beijing to meet him. Xiaolan had said her parents left her substantial assets in China, but Wang Ji's family and the couple Wang Jun and Shui Ru were trying to seize these assets for themselves. Worried about her parents' assets being coveted by others, she planned to return to China on January 30th, coinciding with her first meeting with Zhongbing. On January 30th, planned, Xiaolan was supposed to return to China. But strangely, when Zhongbing called her that day, he couldn't reach her and her social media accounts showed no activity. Xiaolan seemed to have vanished without a trace. At this point, Zhongbing suspected that Wang family might have kidnapped and killed her to seize her assets. With the initial goal of finding his girlfriend's whereabouts, since Zhongbing was already acquainted with the Wang family, around 7 a.m. on January 2nd, 2024, he arranged to meet Wang Ji under the pretense of discussing the upcoming highway project at a field on the outskirts of the city. When Wang Ji arrived, Zhongbing suddenly attacked and restrained him, demanding information about his girlfriend Xiaolan's whereabouts. But Wang Ji insisted he didn't know who that girl was. In a fit of rage, Zhongbing stabbed him multiple times, then used gasoline to burn his body in this deserted field. After committing the crime, he reasoned that since he would face either the death penalty or life imprisonment anyway, he decided to eliminate everyone who could potentially harm his girlfriend. Later that morning, around 8 a.m., he texted Wang Jun to meet at a hotel to discuss the highway project. Wang Jun immediately agreed and quickly arrived at the meeting point. However, Zhongbing had arrived earlier with an iron bar, and as soon as Wang Jun entered the room, he struck him hard in the head, killing him instantly. After committing the crime, he paid for several days' stay and posted a Do Not Disturb sign on the main door. Around 9:30 a.m., he used Wang Jun's phone to text his wife, Shui Ru, asking her to meet at another hotel. He then booked a room at a hotel about 150 feet from where he had just killed Wang Jun. When Shui Ru saw the message from her husband's phone, she went to the hotel without suspicion. As soon as she closed the door, Zhongbing, who was hiding behind it, strangled her until she stopped breathing and became motionless. Just 5 minutes later, the killer left the room, again paid for several days, and instructed the front desk not to disturb the room he had rented. After leaving the hotel around 11 a.m., Zhongbing drove to Wang Ji's house. There he found Shui Ping and her son Wang Cheng at home. Realizing it would be difficult to act with 2 people present, he devised a plan to text Wang Jing, claiming her father had been kidnapped, and provided a fake location where she and her brother could bring the money. When Wang Jing and Wang Cheng left the house around 2 p.m., he entered and killed Shui Ping with multiple fatal stab wounds. Since Zhongbing had been brought to the house by Wang Ji several times before, Shui Ping knew him and opened the door without any suspicion. After committing the crime, he searched the house for any valuable assets to take. Seeing his clothes and shoes were covered in blood, making it difficult to leave, he removed his shirt and shoes and left them at the crime scene, which police later collected. Many officers initially thought these items couldn't possibly have been left by the perpetrator. Zhongbing's purpose in texting Wang Jing was to lure them away from the house and mislead investigators about the kidnapping victims. While police were searching for the other victims, he would have time to escape and search for his girlfriend Xiaolan. He then went to Beijing to search for his girlfriend, hoping to meet Xiaolan one last time before being arrested and tell her he had eliminated everyone who could harm her. But when he reached Beijing, he still couldn't contact his girlfriend or find any trace of her. Feeling despondent, Zhongbing no longer wanted to run. He decided that if police found him, he would surrender without resistance. Thus, the killer was captured in Beijing, and when searched, he had no dangerous weapons on him. Zhongbing also stated he had never carried weapons. Regarding the motive and criminal process that Zhongbing confessed to, Wang Jing and her brother Wang Cheng, still fresh in their grief over losing their parents, were outraged by Zhongbing's explanation. Wang Jing stated that her family had never known Zhongbing's girlfriend and didn't know anyone named Xiaolan. Wang Jing believed Zhongbing's claim that her family was plotting to seize Xiaolan's assets was completely groundless. Police believed that based on Zhongbing's account of the crimes, he might not be lying about Xiaolan, but Wang Jing and Wang Qin consistently denied this. Was the killer Zhongbing lying, or was the Wang family hiding the truth? The investigation team thought that finding the woman named Xiaolan would answer their questions. However, this would be harder than finding a needle in a haystack because there were no real photos of Xiaolan. Zhongbing had only known Xiaolan online, and the account could have been faked. During discussions, some police officers suddenly noticed something unusual about Zhonglin, Wang Jing's boyfriend. They found his behavior very suspicious. First, according to Wang Jing's statement, at a party, Zhonglin had introduced Zhongbing to the family and said he worked in the traffic department. Did he really not know Zhongbing was using a false identity? Second, during the manhunt, he was unusually interested in the clues collected by the investigation team and the progress of capturing the suspect. Even Wang Jing and Wang Chung, the victim's family members, weren't as concerned as he was. Was Zhonglin trying to help the investigation team catch the killer, or did he have other motives? Third, during the operation to capture Zhongbing at the toll station, Zhonglin reported that Zhongbing was carrying dangerous weapons. But when checked, Zhongbing had no weapons, and he said he had never carried any dangerous weapons. Why did Zhonglin make such a report? What was his basis for claiming Zhongbing was armed? Fourth, when he saw the crime scene where Wang Jing's mother was murdered, Zhonglin showed more grief than even her own children. She was his girlfriend's mother, but he cried inconsolably. These situations seemed quite unusual. Therefore, to avoid alerting their target, police quietly investigated Zhonglin. Meanwhile, they secretly questioned Wang Jing and shared their suspicions with her. Wang Jing said that Zhonglin worked at the Inner Mongolia Traffic Police Department. Once, when he invited her family to dinner, he also invited Zhongbing, and that's how they met. The two men frequently communicated and met. How could he not know Zhongbing's true background? It seemed very illogical. Subsequently, police called the Inner Mongolia Traffic Police Department to verify if Zhonglin worked there. Just as they suspected, the department confirmed they had no employee named Zhonglin. He had lied. Hearing this, Wang Jing was completely shocked. She couldn't believe the man she had loved all this time was a liar. The pain of losing her parents hadn't yet subsided, and now Wang Jing received another shocking revelation. Police investigated Zhonglin's recent activities. Reviewing surveillance cameras along various routes, they discovered that on January 1st, his car had stopped at a gas station, but the person who stepped out wasn't Zhonglin. It was Zhongbing. Thus, Zhongbing had used Zhonglin's car to buy gasoline, and the murders occurred the next day. This suggested Zhonglin likely knew about the entire case. Recognizing Zhonglin's suspicious behavior, police brought him in for questioning. When faced with police questions, he initially gave evasive answers to avoid the issues. However, Wang Jing was present and exposed his lie about working at the traffic department. Officers also presented evidence from surveillance cameras. At this point, Zhonglin admitted he knew about the case. He claimed that on the morning of January 2nd, he had gone to meet Zhongbing to discuss some work, when he accidentally discovered Zhongbing threatening Wang Ji. When Zhonglin arrived, Zhongbing allegedly threatened him, saying if he revealed any information to police, he would meet the same fate as Wang Ji. Zhonglin claimed he was too afraid of Zhongbing's potential attack to report to police immediately. Police then asked if he knew Wang Ji had been killed by Zhongbing. Why did you text Wang Jing and Wang Chung to go to Jayaka Park to look for him? Police believed his explanations were contradictory and completely untrue. Under continuous police interrogation pressure, Zhonglin finally confessed. He revealed that the entire case was a conspiracy between the two of them. However, he had wanted Zhongbing to take all the blame. Upon learning this truth, Wang Jing couldn't believe it. He had deceived her about his job, and now she learned he was involved in the plot to murder her entire family. Her sorrowful eyes turned to looks of rage toward the man sitting before her. According to Zhonglin's confession, his relationship with Wang Jing had been planned from the start. It was an elaborate scam without any genuine feelings. Zhonglin revealed that he initially knew Wang Ji was in the construction business. His goal in pursuing Wang Jing was to gain her family's trust and then defraud them of their assets. First, Zhonglin had lied about working at the traffic department and having an extensive network of connections. He promised he could help Wang Ji, Wang Jun, and Xueru in major projects. To convince Wang Jing's family that his promises weren't empty words, Zhonglin reached out to his friend Zhang Bing to pose as a high-ranking official. He arranged several dinner meetings between Zhang Bing and Wang Jing's family. Seeing the plan progressing well, Zhang Lin invented a fictitious highway project. He claimed that in the most recent meeting, there was information about a new highway project being launched with potential profits reaching 50 million yuan, about $11.7 million. Zhong Lin said if Wang Jing's family agreed to bid, he could help them secure the project. Initially, Wang Ji didn't believe Zhong Lin could introduce such a large project. But because Wang Jing and Zhong Lin were preparing to get married, he didn't question it much and said that for such a large project, he would naturally want to participate. When Zhong Lin saw Wang Ji's interest in participating in this highway project, he said Wang Ji first needed to give him 1 million yuan, about $235,000, to establish relationships with the bosses and ensure the bidding would go smoothly. Wang Ji felt that providing 1 million yuan, about $235,000, without any guarantees was too risky. Meanwhile, his niece Shuiru and her husband Wang Jing, who were also in construction, heard about this major project and knew about Zhong Lin's connections, so they were eager to participate. As a result, Wang Ji, Wang Jing, and Shuiru directly gave Zhong Lin 1.7 million yuan, about $400,000 as preparation fees for the project's initial phase. However, after receiving the money, Zhong Lin spent it extravagantly on a lavish lifestyle. He was actually unemployed, and his only real talent was deceiving others. He had never been involved in any real projects. However, the $400,000 was quickly spent, while the project showed no signs of progress. This made Wang Ji increasingly anxious, and he began asking about the project's status. At this point, Zhonglin felt he was about to be exposed. If this deception was discovered, he would certainly face many years in prison. Therefore, a crazy idea formed in his mind. Zhonglin wanted to eliminate everyone who knew about this deception, so he could keep the entire $400,000. However, he didn't want to bear the guilt of these crimes, so he manipulated Zhongbing to be his puppet and take all the blame. Actually, Zhongbing's girlfriend Xiaolan was completely fabricated by Zhonglin. In reality, over 2 years ago, Zhonglin and Zhongbing had been colleagues. During his free time, Zhonglin created a WeChat account pretending to be a woman to flirt with Zhongbing, knowing he was shy around women but very loyal. He named this fictional woman Xiaolan. Whenever Zhonglin had free time, he would use the Xiaolan WeChat account to chat with Zhongbing. Gradually, through sweet words and promises, Zhongbing became completely lost in this deception and believed it was all real. To further eliminate Zhongbing's doubts about Xiaolan, Zhonglin repeatedly asked a woman to pose as Xiaolan during voice calls with Zhongbing. For over 2 years, Zhongbing had blindly trusted in this online girlfriend he had never met. Later, Zhonglin used the Xiaolan WeChat account to swindle large sums of money from Zhongbing through various excuses. Zhonglin kept the WeChat account active, and whenever he needed money, he would have the same female accomplice call Zhongbing to ask for loans. In his scheme to defraud Wang Jing's family, he also had Zhongbing play the role of a successful official. When the scheme to defraud Wang Jing's family was about to be exposed, Zhang Lin thought of Zhongbing again. He planned to turn Zhongbing into his weapon, helping him eliminate all potential threats. To draw Zhongbing into the conspiracy, Zhang Lin used the Xiaolan chat account to fabricate a new story. The chat message read, "My dear Zhongbing, my family is currently facing an unexpected crisis. My father has been imprisoned, and my mother just died from illness in America. I've now lost all my family members, and you're my only support. After I finish my mother's funeral arrangements, I'll return to Beijing to meet you. Currently, my parents left me some assets in China, but Wang Jing's family and the couple Wang Jun and Shuiruona seized these assets for themselves. Worried about my family's accounts being targeted by many people, I'll return to China on January 30th meet you, and protect my parents' assets. Then we can live together." But on January 30th, Zhonglin made the Xiaolan WeChat account unreachable, leading Zhongbing to suspect his girlfriend had met with trouble upon returning to China. Zhongbing then began to suspect that the Wang family might have kidnapped and killed her to seize her assets. Zhonglin then added more details to the story, and Zhongbing became completely convinced that Wang Ji's family had kidnapped his girlfriend. To avenge his girlfriend, and with Zhonglin's assistance, the killer systematically targeted each victim, according to Zhonglin's instructions. As for the police's question about why he reported Zhongbing was carrying dangerous weapons during the manhunt, Zhonglin said he hoped there would be a confrontation where police would eliminate Zhongbing. That way, no one would know he was behind everything. But the plan he thought was perfect only temporarily challenged the investigation team and couldn't fool the veteran detectives. Finally, the series of murders committed by Zhongbing was revealed to have been orchestrated by Zhonglin. However, even when the case was announced as solved and police told Zhongbing the truth, he couldn't believe it. The girlfriend he had dated for 2 years was actually just a fictional account created by Zhonglin. In the trial in Inner Mongolia, Zhongbing, who had murdered 4 people, was sentenced to death. Although Zhonglin didn't directly commit the murders, he was the mastermind behind everything. He was deemed a danger to society, and was also sentenced to death. This horrific case in Shilin Hot City has left many profound lessons for society. Story 3. We will explore a case involving a beautiful Mongolian model with striking looks. However, her life became entangled in a shocking crime that reverberated across Malaysia and the world. The victim in this case was Shirabijan Altancha, born in 1978 in Mongolia. She came from an intellectual family. Her father was a professor at the National University of Mongolia. Due to her parents' work, Altancha grew up in Russia. Besides her beauty, she was highly educated and fluent in several languages, including Mongolian, Russian, Chinese, English, and a bit of French. At 18, Altancha married Madai, the lead singer of Mongolia's famous band Black Moss, and they had a child together. The couple frequently appeared in magazines and interviews, garnering public attention. Their family of 3 was seen as a model of perfection. Altancha's married life seemed carefree, but she dreamed of becoming a model, and was unwilling to stay at home as a housewife. This ambition led to frequent arguments with her husband. Ultimately, their marriage lasted only 2 short years, ending when she was 20 years old. Perhaps because she was still young and yearning for love, Altancha remarried the same year she divorced, this time to a designer. Unfortunately, this marriage also lasted only 2 years. Despite 2 failed marriages, Altancha didn't succumb to despair. Instead, she decided to set aside her personal life to focus on her dreams. She moved to Paris to attend a professional modeling school, where she learned French and honed her skills in etiquette and presentation, equipping herself with both inner and outer beauty for her modeling career. Through hard work, she gradually achieved her dream and became a successful model. In addition to modeling, Altancha was also a businesswoman. Her business involved exporting textiles from China to other countries, which meant she often lived and traveled between Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. To her friends, she led a luxurious lifestyle, frequently visiting high-end locations and mingling with the elite. However, at the peak of her career, Altancha became pregnant again. Tragically, her second child was born with neurological paralysis and required frequent medical care. To this day, the identity of the child's father remains unknown. Rumors suggest he was a wealthy Mongolian businessman, but no one knows for sure. Despite this, having a second child with severe health challenges didn't seem to affect Altancha's stunning appearance. She continued to thrive in elite circles and social events. With her striking looks and ability to speak 4 languages fluently, she could effortlessly blend into any social setting. Altancha's life took a significant turn at age 26 when she met a man in Hong Kong. In 2004, during an international exhibition in Hong Kong, her regal and elegant appearance caught many eyes at the event. One of the people captivated by her was 44-year-old Abdul Razak. At the time, Abdul Razak was not an ordinary man. He was a defense ministry advisor in Malaysia and the director of the Strategic Research Center. More importantly, Razak was the right-hand man of Deputy Prime Minister Najib Razak. Razak's political power was second only to Najib's and far above that of many others. It was widely believed that in just a few years, as Najib ascended to the role of Prime Minister, Razak's political career would flourish further. However, he likely never imagined that his encounter with Altancha would become a ticking time bomb for both his career and Najib's. At the Hong Kong exhibition, Razak was immediately captivated by Altancha, and she, in turn, was drawn to his confidence and charisma. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Razak saw in her not only beauty but also intellect. As mentioned earlier, Altancha was fluent in 4 languages and had extensive experience in international business, making her an extraordinary talent in Razak's eyes. He invited Altancha to work as his translator, though this title was merely a pretext to spend time with her. Razak treated Altancha exceptionally well. He took her on trips to Europe, frequently bought her jewelry, and generously supported her financially when she faced difficulties. His gestures deeply moved her. After more than a year of knowing each other, in 2005, Altancha, who had endured 2 failed marriages, regained her faith and love. She even expressed the desire to have a child with Razak and to become his official wife, despite knowing that Razak was already married. However, she also knew that as a Muslim under Malaysian law, Razak could have up to 4 legal wives. When Altancha brought up this idea, Razak was not enthusiastic. His political career was thriving, and with Najib poised to become prime minister, marrying another woman at this time could jeopardize his prospects. To avoid complications, Razak declined the idea outright. Yet being a man who enjoyed romance, he didn't completely cut ties with Altancha, as he still wanted her to bear his child. Razak devised a solution. He arranged for a lawyer friend to marry Altancha as a legal formality, ensuring she had a legitimate husband on paper, while he and Altancha continued their secret relationship. When Altancha discovered Razak's plan and realized he only saw her as a mistress, she decided to confront him. In October 2005, while in Mongolia, Altancha resolved to travel to Malaysia to have a clear discussion with Razak. Accompanying her on this trip was her cousin. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Upon her arrival in Malaysia, Razak seemed unwilling to meet her. For days, Altancha tried to contact Razak but failed. With her strong-willed personality, she refused to give up. In the following days, she went directly to Razak's house, shouting in front of his gate. Despite her persistence, Razak continued to avoid her, leaving her to scream outside. At this stage, the situation was still just a typical affair involving a married man and his mistress. However, the story soon took a dramatic turn, becoming one of the most infamous criminal cases. On the evening of October 19, 2006, around 7 p.m., Altancha and her cousin were resting in their hotel room, when Altancha suddenly received a phone call and rushed out. Her cousin, noticing her urgency, asked what was happening. Altancha replied that her husband had sent someone to pick her up and take her to his villa in Damansara Heights. After finalizing their plan, they went to Asala's house to retrieve the explosives. Cyril and Asala claimed that, once everything was prepared, Cyril's ex-girlfriend left the scene. The 2 men then transported Altancha to the Shah Alam Forest Reserve near Kuala Lumpur. Upon arrival, Asala produced an M5 firearm equipped with a silencer and handed it to Cyril, ordering him to shoot the victim. Terrified upon hearing this, Altancha began to struggle and panic. The 2 men restrained her and forcibly removed her jewelry. Cyril and Asala testified that Altancha, facing 2 men, had no way to resist. Throughout the ordeal, she begged them not to kill her, pleading that she was pregnant with Razak's child and hoping this would spare her. However, Azela and Cyril were unmoved by her pleas. Bound by orders from their superiors, they felt they had to complete their mission. According to their confession, after the gunshot, Azela immediately stripped Altancha of her clothing, and Cyril placed all her garments into a black trash bag. They used another black bag to cover her head, aiming to prevent blood from spilling around the area. Azela then grabbed her legs while Cyril held her arms, and together they carried her deeper into the forest. Once they found a suitable spot, Azula brought out explosives and divided them into 2 portions. Cyril placed one portion at Altancha's head, while Azula positioned the other portions at her abdomen and feet. They connected the charges with detonator cords, retreated to a safe distance, and triggered the explosion. This was the sequence of events described by Azula and Cyril. However, they emphasized that they did not know the woman personally and were merely executing orders from their superior. Naturally, the critical question became, who issued these orders? Was it Razak? Or perhaps the other man in the photograph, Altancha, had shown her cousin, Deputy Prime Minister Najib? Or was it someone else entirely? The horrifying nature of this case, coupled with its implications for relations between Mongolia and Malaysia, captured the attention of French investigative journalist Arnaud de Bussy. A Southeast Asia correspondent known for uncovering sensitive stories, Arnaud had reported on the A's massacre, Myanmar's military regime, and the plight of the Rohingya people. As is often the case with investigative journalism, exposing the truth came with significant risks. In 2019, Arnaud mysteriously fell from a train in Thailand, and whether his death was linked to another assassination remains unknown. Returning to Arnaud's investigation of this case, he uncovered layers of complexity far beyond initial suspicions. According to his findings, Altancha and Razak had traveled to Europe together in 2005. This trip, however, was not merely a romantic getaway. Arnaud suspected that one of their destinations was France, not for luxury shopping or sightseeing at the Eiffel Tower, but to discuss the procurement of military submarines. Altancha, fluent in 4 languages, served as Razak's interpreter during negotiations with arms dealers. This deal involved Razak acting on behalf of then Deputy Prime Minister Najib to secure military submarines. While it is normal for a Deputy Prime Minister to arrange military equipment purchases, this transaction was far from straightforward. Razak and Najib allegedly planned to profit from the deal, earning a commission of up to 500 million euros from the French arms dealer. A significant portion of this money was reportedly funneled into a Hong Kong-registered company owned by Razak and his father. Arnaud's investigation revealed that Altancha, upon learning of this deal, demanded a share of the commission. When Razak refused, Altancha began to harass him incessantly. Unable to endure her relentless pressure, Razak reportedly sought help from another close associate of Najib's, the deputy director of the political division, to handle the situation. As a result, Altancha was labeled a spy, abducted on October 19th, and ultimately murdered in the forest. According to journalist Arnaud's analysis, the entire case can be simplified as follows. Razak and Najib were involved in corruption, and Altancha demanded a share of the profits. When her demands were denied, she resorted to blackmail. However, this backfired, ultimately costing her life. The information gathered by Malaysian police closely aligned with Arnaud's findings. Authorities believed Razak was the mastermind who ordered Saral and Azala to carry out the murder. As a result, Razak was arrested and charged with abetting murder. At this point, the case already seemed highly complex, but it didn't end there. 7 months after Altancha's remains were discovered, the trial officially began. Special Operations Officers Saral and Azala were charged with murder. In court, they repeated the same testimony they had given to the police, admitting to the killing. Razak, on the other hand, was charged with incitement to murder, but he vehemently denied the accusations. He maintained his earlier statement, claiming that he was a victim of harassment by Altancha and had no involvement in her death. During the trial, the case captivated all of Malaysia, sparking widespread speculation and rumors about the truth. One such rumor alleged that Razak had introduced Altancha to Najib as a mistress to curry favor with his superior. The photograph of the 3 dining together in Paris, which Altancha's cousin mentioned, was often cited as evidence of this claim. However, others argued that the photo circulating online was fake and that the real photo had never been made public. Razak never commented on these rumors. Another central figure caught in the controversy was Deputy Prime Minister Najib. He adamantly denied ever knowing Altancha. By 2008, the trial was still ongoing. That year was also significant for Malaysia, as it marked the general election. Despite the cloud of the Mongolian woman's murder case, Najib ran for office. Though the case affected his reputation, he successfully transitioned from Deputy Prime Minister to Prime Minister. However, just 3 months after Najib assumed office, a bombshell declaration surfaced online alleging that the new Prime Minister had known Altancha and had an intimate relationship with her. This declaration was made by a former police officer named Bala. After leaving law enforcement, Bala became a private investigator. He stated that Razak had hired him as a personal bodyguard before the murder occurred. Razak allegedly sought Bala's services because he was being relentlessly harassed by a Mongolian woman named Altancha, and Bala's job was to protect Razak and keep Altancha away. In his declaration, Bala claimed that Razak didn't meet Altancha in Hong Kong, but rather at a diamond exhibition in Singapore. Moreover, Razak was introduced to Altancha by Najib himself. Bala further stated that Najib had spoken to Razak about his relationship with the Mongolian woman, mentioning her special skills. Subsequently, the 3 of them traveled to Paris for dinner, where the now infamous photograph of them was taken. According to Bala's statement, Najib had once told Razak that he hoped Razak could provide financial support to the woman. Following this, Razak frequently received calls from Altancha demanding money. At first, Razak agreed to her requests, even purchasing a house for her in Mongolia. However, over time, he grew tired of supporting her, realizing she was a con artist and had even deceived Najib. Later, because of the submarine deal, Razak decided to stop giving her money. When Altancha didn't receive the funds she demanded, she often showed up at Razak's house, shouting and causing a scene. Bala, Razak's bodyguard, stated that he had personally intervened to stop her on one occasion. At the time, Altancha didn't continue her confrontation, but left a note for Razak instead. Bala mentioned that during his interaction with Altancha, he found her to be someone he could reason with. Through their conversation, he learned that Razak had promised to pay her $500,000 as a commission from the submarine transaction. In Bala's declaration, he also mentioned asking Altancha why she was in such urgent need of money. She explained that her brother had mortgaged the house Razak had bought for her, and she wanted to reclaim it. On the day of Altancha's disappearance, Bala stated that he had seen her. Razak had called him, instructing him to detain Altancha until his people arrived. Shortly afterward, a red car appeared and Altancha was forcibly taken into the vehicle. After Altancha's disappearance, Bala was arrested by the police and detained for 7 days. While in custody, Bala immediately sought Razak's help. Razak, in turn, reached out to his superior, then Deputy Prime Minister Najib, for assistance. According to Bala, Najib replied to Razak via text, stating, "I met with the chief of police this morning. The issue will be resolved. Stay calm." After 7 days in detention, Bala was told he could leave after signing a statement. However, upon reviewing the document, he noticed that all mentions of Deputy Prime Minister Najib had been removed. On the same evening that Bala made his declaration public, Prime Minister Najib held a press conference, once again denying any acquaintance with Altancha. The very next day, something unexpected occurred. Bala issued a second declaration. In this new statement, he completely retracted his earlier claims, stating that the contents of the first declaration were entirely false. Shortly afterward, Bala and his entire family disappeared from Malaysia. His home was later found to have been broken into, and no one could contact him again. Naturally, he was also unavailable to testify in court. At this point, there were now 3 different versions of events. Which version represents the truth? After many days of trial proceedings, the court ruled that there was insufficient evidence to convict Razak and declared him not guilty, releasing him immediately. Upon his release, Razak held a press conference, denying his former bodyguard's claims and reiterating that Najib truly had no connection to Altancha. Of course, after Razak's release, the trial continued, shifting its focus to the 2 individuals who carried out the murder, Azala and Cyril. Their behavior in court was astonishing. During his defense, Cyril had an emotional outburst, claiming they were merely scapegoats protecting an unnamed person who had never been brought to court. Cyril stated, "I had no reason to harm the victim or take her life in such a cruel way. I will appeal. The court has the authority to decide my fate, but if it sentences me to death, it will only fulfill someone else's plan. Please do not impose the death penalty on me." Although both men insisted they were following orders, the evidence against them was irrefutable. Azela and Cyril were ultimately convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Their families were deeply emotional upon hearing the verdict, but immediately decided to file appeals. Azela even reassured his family as they faced the grim outcome. Altancha's family, particularly her father, was dissatisfied with the ruling. He believed the case was far more complex, and that those truly responsible for the crime extended beyond the 2 convicted men. Consequently, the family filed a civil lawsuit, claiming that the case had caused them severe emotional and psychological distress. They sought damages of 100 million ringgit, equivalent to $22 million from 4 parties, Cyril, Azela, Razak, and the Malaysian government. However, it would take 13 years for this civil case to finally go to trial, a matter we'll discuss later. Returning to the appeals process of the 2 death row convicts after their sentencing, Razak's former bodyguard, Bala, unexpectedly resurfaced. In an interview, he revealed that after making his initial declaration, he had received a threatening phone call from Najib's wife, who warned him that his entire family was at risk. Bala claimed he was then coerced into writing the second declaration. He and his family were subsequently taken to Singapore by Najib's brother, and eventually fled to various locations before going into hiding in India. Bala stated during his reappearance that as long as Najib remained in power, he could not return to Malaysia. At this point, a major turning point in the case occurred. After Azala and Cyril appealed their death sentences, the appellate court ruled that neither man had a motive to kill Altancha. As a result, their prior convictions were overturned and they were acquitted and released. Notably, the year of their release, 2013, was also the year Najib was re-elected as Prime Minister. Around this time, Najib's government began prosecuting critics under charges of sedition. Najib's power had reached its peak. But does this mean that no one will ever be held accountable for Altancha's death? When Cyril and Asala were released, it caused a fierce public reaction. Due to overwhelming public pressure, the prosecution filed another appeal. This time, the court reversed its previous decision. Cyril and Azala's murder conviction was reinstated along with their death sentences. Police immediately moved to arrest them. However, Cyril had already used his temporary freedom to flee to Australia, and only Azala was recaptured. Although Malaysian police requested that Australian authorities extradite Cyril for trial, Australia's opposition to the death penalty has led to an ongoing extradition dispute between the two countries. In 2018, Malaysia experienced major political upheaval. The UMNO party, which had ruled Malaysia for 60 years, was overthrown during Najib's administration due to involvement in the 1MDB fund corruption scandal by the opposition Hope Alliance Party. Najib himself was arrested on corruption charges. Returning to the Altancha case, after Najib lost power, Asala declared he was ready to reveal case details in exchange for full amnesty from the new government. We have summarized Asala's statement in 5 points. First, the directive came from Najib, and he and Cyril acted on Najib's orders. Second, Najib described Altancha as a foreign spy and national security threat. In one meeting, Najib discussed killing Altancha with him. Third, Najib sent him to the police Special Action Unit's armory to obtain C4 explosives. Fourth, during the initial trial, certain evidence was suppressed and not submitted to court. Fifth, Najib told them they would receive help with everything, including protection from prosecution. Notably, although Najib was implicated in the 1MDB scandal, he remained free at the time. After Asila's statement, Najib immediately responded, claiming the Hope Alliance government was conspiring with Asila to frame him. Later, Najib posted on Facebook that the explosives found at the scene were LDX and PTM, types used in mining and construction, not C4 as reported. By 2019, Altancha's father's 100 million ringgit compensation lawsuit finally went to trial. After 13 years, Altancha's father said that after learning of his daughter's death, he conducted his own investigation. He discovered a bank transfer of $18,000 from Razak in Altancha's bank account. Additionally, he found a jewelry receipt for 18,000 Hong Kong dollars, also paid by Razak. However, this could only prove financial transactions, not a romantic relationship between them. Additionally, Altancha's father revealed that before his daughter's disappearance, they had shared a meal together. During the meal, Altancha told him she would go to Malaysia the next day to find Razak. Her father said, "I'm not sure if she was referring to Najib or Razak at the time, as both men had these letters in their names." Later, Altancha told him she had a relationship with a powerful figure called Bajinda, who was Razak. She also mentioned to him that she was going to Malaysia to request money. Her son's medical treatment. During the meal, Altancha went to the restroom. While she was away, her phone rang in her purse. He opened the purse to check and discovered a photograph of Altancha with a man, but he couldn't remember who the man was. A police officer who had investigated the case also presented shocking evidence. It turned out that on the day of her disappearance, at 1:08 p.m., Altancha had actually visited the police station. The police reporting system contained 2 pages of documentation, stating that her reason for coming to Malaysia was to meet Razak. Once she received the money Razak had promised, she would return to Mongolia. The report also mentioned that if anything happened to her, the police should look for Razak. In the report, Altancha wrote, "Perhaps this is my fault. Now I truly understand. He doesn't love me anymore. When I came to Malaysia, I did foolish things. I wrote him a letter saying I would vanish from this world. After receiving the letter, he threatened to deal with me. I was wrong. I blackmailed him. But now he's trying to kill me." The latest news is that a carpet merchant from Dubai, who is also a friend of Najib, and his wife has publicly admitted to being involved in Altancha's murder. This carpet merchant was the one who forced Razak's bodyguard and his entire family to flee Malaysia. Story 4. It all started on Friday, March 15, 2013 in Chiayi County, located in the southwestern part of Taiwan, during spring, with constant rain falling day and night. That afternoon, The Shushing Township Police Station in Jiai County received a request for investigative assistance from the Datong Police Station in Sanyuan District, New Taipei City. They asked the Shushing Police to search for the victim's body in public restrooms within the area. It turns out that earlier that morning, Datong Police received an anonymous letter from the city of Taoyuan. The letter had no signature, and the font was unusually small. What stood out the most was that each letter seemed to be written multiple times, as if someone was trying to obscure their handwriting. At first, they thought it might be a cruel prank, but when a curious officer opened the letter, the content sent a shiver down his spine. The letter read, "There is a dead body in a public restroom 200 meters from the temple. Please bury it properly. I have no money for funeral expenses. Thank you." Although the authenticity of the letter couldn't be verified, the police didn't dare take it lightly, given that it involved a human life. They immediately sent an investigation request to the Shushing Police Station in Jiai County. Upon receiving the notification, Shushing Police held an emergency meeting to plan their search. Officers were sent to check public restrooms in the area, while maintaining close communication with the Sanyuan Police to exchange information and ensure the case was resolved as quickly as possible. As night fell, the atmosphere in Shushing Township grew tense and eerie. After 3 hours of exhausting searching, the police finally found a clue. An officer was searching near the Shushing Temple in the center of town. The temple, which dates back to the Ming Dynasty, has undergone several renovations and is a popular spot for locals to pray. As she entered a nearby public restroom, she noticed something unusual. A plastic bag was resting on the lid of a toilet tank. She immediately realized that this was no ordinary discovery and called for other officers to come assist. According to the description in the letter, this could be the location where the body was dumped. However, the plastic bag was only about the size of a basketball and didn't seem big enough to contain a whole body. Initially, they speculated that it might be the body of a baby. As they carefully opened the bag, they discovered another plastic bag inside, the kind typically used in supermarkets. Upon peeling back 2 layers, a foul stench hit their faces. Inside they found several more layers, including a woven bag, a jacket, a t-shirt, shorts, and women's underwear. 7 layers in total. When the final layer was removed, a head was revealed. The sight left everyone who witnessed it horrified. A young, newly recruited officer couldn't hold back and vomited right there on the spot. Based on the size of the head, it was clear that it belonged to an adult. The surface of the head was covered with a thick layer of salt and smelled like cured meat. Inside the jacket, officers found a piece of paper with the words San Yuan Chun, Wanting written in large, repeated handwriting, matching the style of the anonymous letter Datong Police had received earlier. The results of the forensic examination revealed that the victim was a female between the ages of 25 and 35, with a very clean, straight cut to the head. Based on the method of the crime, it seemed that the perpetrator had significant experience with cutting meat, as such a straight cut would be difficult to achieve with soft or frozen meat. It is possible that the head was in a semi-frozen state and was cut with a sharp blade. To determine the exact type of blade used, the body would need to be found for comparison and identification. The head had been treated with a pickling process, causing the skin to shrivel and lose moisture, giving it a shriveled appearance. Professor Yao Lan from Taiwan's National Police University pointed out that the level of decomposition is often used to estimate the time of death. If the head had been frozen and pickled, it would make determining the time of death much more difficult. The case also attracted the attention of forensic expert Henry Lee, who suggested that the application of salt to the body could prevent decomposition, stop the growth of fly larvae, and reduce the foul odor. The plastic bag containing the head was an important piece of evidence, as the police could focus on analyzing fingerprints and DNA on the bag, the anonymous letter, and also consider the psychological profile of the suspect. This could help link the clues together. At the same time, the police worked to trace the origin of the anonymous letter. Although the letter had been sent from Taoyuan City, the stamp on the envelope was from New Taipei City, clearly indicating that the return address was a fake. This made it difficult for the police to follow up on this lead. Therefore, the police shifted their attention to the name mentioned in the letter and the note found inside the plastic bag containing the head, Chun Wanting. After checking missing persons records, the police discovered that there were 64 people named Chun Wanting. Fortunately, the note in the bag mentioned San Yuan, so the police narrowed the search down to the Sanyuan district in New Taipei City. After screening and verifying the information, they quickly identified a missing person who matched the victim's age. The police contacted the family of the missing woman. Later, a mother and her eldest son arrived to identify the body. Although the victim's face had shriveled and was difficult to recognize, the mother identified her daughter by the missing upper teeth. She also noticed the head-covering outfit, which was the same one she had purchased for her daughter. The mother could not accept the tragic death of her daughter, and she cried uncontrollably at the scene. Through DNA comparison, the police confirmed that the victim's name was Chunwon Ting, 34 years old. The victim's mother was named Chun Mu, and she had 5 children. The eldest daughter ran a busy fruit business in Keelung City, so her mother, along with her eldest and youngest sons, had traveled to Keelung to assist. The house in rural Sanyuan was home to her second son, Chun Jiafu, and her youngest daughter, Ting. Due to Ting's mental health issues, her mother would visit her regularly. However, in December 2012, after a visit with her daughter, Ting's second son informed her that his sister had gone missing. After an unsuccessful search, the family reported her disappearance to the police, but she was still missing. 3 months later, the mother received news about her daughter, but what she had hoped would be good news turned out to be tragic. The victim, Ting, whose real name was Chincha Hui, was born in 1978 in New Taipei City. She was 34 years old at the time of her disappearance. From a young age, she was known for her striking beauty and delicate features, with long hair that resembled a doll's. At school, she was often referred to as the campus beauty, and many people admired her. Some, even from the entertainment industry, approached her, hoping to turn her into a star. However, when Ting was 15 years old and in junior high school, she began associating with a bad crowd. Under their influence, she began to neglect her studies, skipping school to hang out at bars, smoke, drink, and eventually experiment with drugs. At the age of 18, she had an unintended pregnancy. Her family pressured her to abort, but she insisted on marrying the father of the child, despite intense opposition from her family. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl. After getting married, she moved with her husband and daughter to Taoyuan City. However, not long after, her husband enlisted in the military and had an affair during his service. The couple eventually divorced, ending their 4-year marriage. At 22, moved back to her family home in San Juan to live with her second brother, Jiafu. The end of her marriage was a major blow to her mental health and marked a turning point in her life. Ting fell into depression and even contemplated suicide. Though she survived, she suffered from mental health issues thereafter. Neighbors often saw her wearing heavy makeup and wandering around outside in her pajamas. Due to this incident, her mother decided to change her daughter's name from Shu Hui to Ting, hoping the new name would help her turn her life around. However, most of the neighbors did not know about the name change and continued to call her Shu Hui. Investigations revealed that Ting had a history of drug use, though it was unclear whether she had stopped. Police confirmed that she had a strong smoking habit. Despite her mother and second brother frequently giving her money, it was still not enough to support her high-spending habits. To make ends meet, Ting resorted to selling her body to various men, including gangsters, taxi drivers, and others. She even set a clear price, $500 New Taiwan dollars, about $15 US dollars for sex, and $50 to $100 New Taiwan dollars for farmland. Later, Ting began bringing a different man home every day, which frustrated her mother and second brother, but they were powerless to stop her. Following these leads, the police speculated that Ting may have had a conflict with someone during one of her encounters and was subsequently killed. Semen from an unknown man was found on a pair of panties that had been wrapped around her head. The police then began screening men who had previously been involved with her. A taxi driver was later identified, but the investigation results were disappointing. Although the DNA on the panties matched his, he had no clear motive for the crime, and there was no substantial evidence linking him to the murder. The police concluded that Ting had changed her name several years ago, a fact that many people did not know. However, the person who sent the letter to the police station seemed to know her new name, suggesting they were familiar with the victim. After interviewing several of her neighbors, some key clues caught the police's attention. One neighbor revealed that Ting had once said her brother, Jiafu, had sexually assaulted her, but due to her mental health issues, no one believed her claims. One of Ting's downstairs neighbors shared the following. Back in March, the sewage system in my house suddenly began to emit a horrible, rancid odor, along with chunks of meat and grease. The smell was unbearable. I went to Jia Fu, who is usually difficult to get along with, but for some reason he became unusually talkative and even offered to help clear the drain. This felt very strange to me, but in the end, I cleaned it myself. Police investigations revealed that Jia Fu had purchased life insurance for his sister Ting from several insurance companies starting in 2011. With a total coverage amounting to $6.36 million New Taiwan dollars, or approximately $165,000 US dollars. If this were an insurance fraud case, then everything would start to make sense. As a result, Jia Fu became the primary suspect. It was also discovered that Jia Fu had recently married Lu Imo, a woman from Fujian, China. After the incident, Lu Imo bought a one-way ticket back to Fujian to attend a family funeral. However, the police found her behavior suspicious. Lu Imo, 22 years old, is described as attractive and comes from a well-off family. Both of her parents have stable jobs. In contrast, Jia Fu's family background is more modest. His father passed away suddenly over 15 years ago. His mother has no official job, and Jia Fu himself lives with his younger sister. In February 2012, Lu Imo met Jia Fu, and after dating for a while, she found him to be honest, a non-smoker, non-drinker, and very kind toward her. She decided to marry him just a few months later. Although Lu Mo's family did not demand a dowry, Jia Fu voluntarily gave $260,000 New Taiwan dollars as a gesture, which deeply touched her. However, their happiness did not last, and things began to change. After the marriage, Jia Fu became very stingy and hardly gave Lu Imo anything, not even a wedding ring, which she had to buy herself. On October 30th, 2012, Lu Imo arrived in Taiwan from Fujian, but did not find her brother-in-law at home. Surprised, she asked her husband about it, but he insisted that his sister had gone missing. He described Ting, saying she's not a good person, has bad friends, and is always using drugs and drinking. Lu Imo later met with her mother-in-law, but she did not mention anything about her daughter's whereabouts. Lu Imo recalled that both her husband and mother-in-law seemed unusually indifferent to Ting's safety. Furthermore, they often had secretive, incomprehensible conversations. When Lu Imo asked what they were talking about, they would brush it off, saying it was nothing. Lu Imo also noticed other strange occurrences in the house. She discovered that Ting's room often had a foul smell, which she couldn't explain. When she asked her husband if the room needed cleaning, he became angry and harshly scolded her. Jia Fu claimed it was the smell of oil smoke coming from outside the window. Lu Imo kept quiet and refrained from mentioning the cleaning again. This incident made her fearful of her husband, and she no longer dared to disobey him. The more time she spent with him, the more unsettling traits she discovered in her husband. When he was in mainland China, Jia Fu was very calm and considerate, but once he returned to Taiwan, he became a completely different person. He became aggressive, insulting, and even threatened Lu Imo over minor domestic disagreements. He bluntly told Lu Imo, "I bought you, and everything about you belongs to me." 2 months later, on February 26, 2013, Lu Imo hurriedly returned to China and never came back to Taiwan. During the investigation, the police contacted Lu Imo, who was in China, to ask why she had returned at that time. Lu Imo replied, "My aunt passed away, so I had to go back to my hometown to attend the funeral." As for the discovery of Ting's head in Shuaixiang Township, Jiai County, she claimed, "I had no idea about that. I only knew she had been missing for a while." Later, Lu Imo confessed the truth to the local police in Fujian. "I accidentally saw a frozen head in my husband's refrigerator, but I didn't know whose it was. Fearing for my safety, I hurried back to China right after that." She also mentioned, "When I first came to Taiwan, Jia Fu suggested buying insurance for me. But due to issues with my residence permit, we couldn't proceed. Every time I think about it, I feel incredibly scared." It was known that Jia Fu worked as a chef at a self-service restaurant in the Sanyuan district of New Taipei City. The restaurant owner stated that Jia Fu had worked there for several years, was hardworking, and rarely took time off. However, on March 12th and 13th, he suddenly requested time off, citing the need to do a thorough cleaning of his house. He also borrowed a pair of rubber gloves and a kitchen knife from the restaurant. 2 days later, on March 14th, he returned to work, but did not return the knife. The restaurant owner found this odd, but thought little of it, assuming the knife was not valuable. After examining Jia Fu's mobile phone location records, the police discovered that his phone had pinged in Shuaixiang Township, Jiai County, on March 13th, where the head had been found. Upon reviewing surveillance footage, The police saw that at 4 a.m. on March 13th, Jiafu was carrying 3 large black trash bags as he left his house in Sanyuan, New Taipei. By 5 a.m., he was at New Taipei train station, wearing a black jacket, a wig, sunglasses, and a mask. The black trash bags had turned into a single white plastic bag. At 10:46 a.m., he took a bus to Jiai County carrying the white plastic bag and appeared on a street in Shuichang Township. He walked along the main road towards a public restroom near the Mushong Tianguan Temple. 10 minutes later, he returned without the white plastic bag. The police believe that Jiafu deliberately disguised himself and went to Shuichang Township to dispose of the body, but he continuously denied it. Even when the police presented a photo of the head and asked him to identify whether it belonged to his sister Ting, he refused to answer, citing that it was too painful. The police speculate that the black trash bags shown in the surveillance footage may have contained the remaining parts of Ting's body, and Jiafu's house was likely the primary crime scene. They believe there are still many other pieces of evidence left at his home. After obtaining a search warrant, the police immediately raided Jiafu's home. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. The main entrance led to a hallway, and turning left would take you to Jiafu's master bedroom. The kitchen and bathroom were on one side of the hallway, with the living room on the other side. Next to the living room was the second bedroom, which had previously been occupied by Ting. In the grout between the bathroom tiles and the closet in Ting's bedroom, police found blood samples. Additionally, DNA samples, suspected to be human, were found on the handle of a knife and a rice cooker in the kitchen. Laboratory tests confirmed that the blood and DNA samples matched the victim, Ting. Forensic handwriting experts also discovered that the letters and notes found at the scene were written by Jiafu. Although the handwriting appeared to be copied, certain letters showed the same unique writing habits found in his personal notebook. What was strange, however, was that, aside from the head, the police had not found the rest of Ting's body. A neighbor living below Jiafu reported seeing a large amount of minced meat leaking from the drain in his apartment. This led police to suspect that Jiafu had dismembered his sister, ground her body, and flushed it down the drain. The authorities even checked the septic tank, but due to the time that had passed, found no useful evidence. At 3:48 a.m. on March 18th, the police arrested Jiafu on suspicion of murder. He was dressed in camouflage, wearing a helmet, and limped as he was escorted by officers. He was later transferred to Shuixiang Police Station in Jiai County for further investigation. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Jiafu finally confessed to killing his sister. However, when asked why he did it, he claimed, "Aliens told me to do it. It wasn't my own intention." Jiafu, 38 years old, was born in 1975 in New Taipei City and was the 3rd child in his family. He had an older sister and brother, as well as a younger sister and brother. After finishing middle school, he became a chef. A few years before the incident, Jiafu changed jobs frequently due to unstable work conditions, and he never married or had children until February 2012, when he was introduced to a woman from Fujian named Liu Mo. They met and got married. To outsiders, Jiafu appeared to be a quiet, sincere man with few friends who rarely went out. His co-workers and bosses spoke highly of him. However, some neighbors found his behavior and mannerisms odd. He would often sit motionless on his motorcycle, and when he saw acquaintances, he would smile awkwardly, making others feel uncomfortable. Beneath this seemingly dull exterior, Jiafu had another side to him. He was an extreme fan. This type of fan engages in stalking, surveillance, and taking covert photos to gather personal information about celebrities, often taking pride in doing so. When police searched his belongings, they found a notebook filled with lewd love letters to his idol, mostly directed at actress Jeannie Chua. He also sent her these love letters along with nude photos of himself, calling her his wife, and threatening to prevent her from filming kissing scenes with anyone else. There was even an instance where Jiafu sent a stack of used toilet paper covered in his semen to the actress. For Jiafu, these perverse actions caused him no shame. He even expressed his excitement to the police, his face revealing a disturbing sense of pleasure. In early 2011, Jiafu began purchasing life insurance for his sister Ting, with him and their mother as the beneficiaries. However, due to his inability to pay the premiums, one of the policies was eventually canceled. The police suspected that he might have had a fraudulent motive, possibly intending to claim the insurance money through murder. However, Jiafu denied this, stating, "I only have a mortgage of 300,000 new Taiwan dollars, about 9,500 US dollars, and a monthly income of 40,000 NTD. about US $1,300. So I'm not financially pressured. The insurance was simply a way to further protect my family. Investigations revealed that by December 2011, Jiafu had begun planning to obtain a mental disorder certification. His older brother was on psychiatric medication, and his sister Ting also had mental health issues. So Jiafu used his family's history as an excuse to purchase such medications. In March 2012, he was granted a certificate for moderate mental disorder. To avoid attracting the attention of neighbors, Jiafu started bringing black trash bags into the house in batches, presumably in preparation for dismembering the body. On the night of December 9, 2012, when the weather turned colder, their mother went to visit their older brother's home in Keelung after a trip back to the countryside. It was that very night that Jiafu took action. He was awakened by numerous phone calls and overheard his sister arranging dates and engaging in prostitution with multiple men. Out of anger and frustration, he decided to kill his sister. Afterward, he applied salt to her head to preserve it and prevent decomposition, storing the rest of her body in her room until 3 months later, when he finally disposed of it between March 12th and 13th, 2013. Furthermore, he wrapped a pair of his sister's underwear, which had traces of another man's semen on it, around her head to mislead the police into thinking that the murder had been committed in a different way. However, after 2 days of leaving the head in the bathroom without any action from authorities, Jiafu began to worry. What if the cleaning staff found the bag and threw it away? If the police couldn't confirm that Ting was dead, he would have to wait 7 years until she was officially declared missing before a death certificate could be issued. He couldn't wait that long. He wanted to collect the insurance money as soon as possible. To ensure someone discovered the body sooner, on March 15th, he anonymously sent a letter to the San Juan police station. 6 months after the incident, in June 2013, the case went to trial at the Jiai County Court. The trial began, and Jiafu was charged with murder and fraud. During the proceedings, Jiafu suddenly changed his testimony and claimed his innocence. Throughout the trial, he repeatedly acted insane, claiming, "Aliens implanted a chip in my brain, and they are using lasers to track me." Due to his erratic behavior, he was sent to the National Taiwan University Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. The results showed that Jiafu's mental state was completely normal, with no signs of abnormalities. After the trial, the Jiai County Court issued a first-instance verdict. Jiafu was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. The defense lawyer was dissatisfied with the verdict and appealed. In March 2015, during the appeal, the judges considered Jiafu's filial piety toward his mother, and the fact that his mother had taken care of the victim, Ting, for many years. She had lost her daughter, and if Jiafu were sentenced to death, it would mean losing another child. As a result, the appellate court reduced the sentence to life imprisonment. This decision caused public outrage, with many people openly criticizing how a seemingly filial son could use such a brutal method to kill his own sister in order to fraudulently collect insurance money. However, the case ended with the judge's decision. Later, rumors began to spread about a ghostly woman and a public restroom at the Mushong Tianguan Temple. According to legend, people reported hearing a woman's mournful crying at night in the public restroom, and some even claimed to have seen a woman in a white dress wandering there. There were many different versions of the legend, all steeped in supernatural and mysterious elements. As a result, the restroom was eventually demolished and rebuilt, and the ghostly tales faded away. A family that seemed normal was shattered by a tragic and heartbreaking outcome, especially as the perpetrator turned out to be the brother who shared the same blood. Story 5. Around 5:30 p.m. on July 9, 2007, a concussion explosion shattered the peace on Jinshe Road in Jinan City, Shandong Province, China. The force of the blast had completely destroyed a Honda car, scattering the driver's body parts, some of which were found on the windows of nearby stores. A nearby taxi also caught fire, leaving the driver severely burned. Due to the severity of the explosion, a fruit vendor near the car was also injured, struck in the neck by debris, and requiring over 10 stitches. The entire neighborhood was in chaos. Bystanders gathered, speculating wildly. Some thought it was routine traffic accident, while others suspected a fuel tank explosion from a collision. But could an ordinary accident or fuel tank explosion have caused such devastating destruction? This question began to take root in the minds of the witnesses. Just minutes after the explosion, the police arrived at the scene. Through preliminary investigation, they confirmed one fatality, one pedestrian injury, significant damage to a taxi, and 2 other vehicles completely destroyed. With such a serious explosion occurring in the bustling city center, the investigators' urgent task was to determine the cause. Was this an unfortunate accident, or did a darker plot lie behind it? As the investigation delved deeper, the detectives realized the truly grave nature of the case. They discovered this was not a random explosion, but one carried out using TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive. This detail immediately revealed a terrifying truth. This was a premeditated murder. Through forensic analysis, the victim's identity was quickly established. She was 31-year-old Lou Hyping, residing in a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment in the Rue residential community. The destroyed car was a brand new light blue Honda. But what drew the investigators' attention was not the victim's affluent lifestyle, but her unique status, a senior political cadre at the Jinan Municipal Land Resources Bureau and the Deputy Secretary of the Youth League Committee of the agency. News of the horrific death of a female state official in the bustling streets quickly spread, triggering an earthquake of public opinion in Jinan. The case was immediately elevated to a higher level of investigation. Agonizing questions began to surface. Who could have harbored such deep hatred to use such a brutal method to kill a government official? And what led Lou Hyping to pay the ultimate price? While it seemed that all traces had been erased by the explosion, a surprising discovery opened the first breakthrough in the investigation. In a trash can near the scene, the investigators found a shattered mobile phone and a remote-controlled device. After extensive cross-referencing with telecom providers, they were able to identify the owner of the phone's SIM card as Chin Ji, a 50-year-old deputy team leader of the 3rd Squadron of the Jinan Municipal Public Security Bureau. This clue became even more suspicious when linked to the use of TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive that only those in special positions could access. As the investigators were considering this connection, another team of police, through questioning of local vendors and residents, learned that a police car had appeared near the site just before the explosion. Through the surveillance camera system and other investigative methods, they quickly determined this car belonged to the security team where Chin Ji was employed. In a covert investigation, the detectives examined this police car and confirmed that some of the residues found in the vehicle matched those from the explosion. This suggests that after using the car to commit the crime, the perpetrator had failed to thoroughly clean the vehicle, leaving a significant amount of explosive powder on the person and footprints of the culprit inside the police car. The security team and other units also confirmed that on the day of the incident, only Chin Ji's vehicle had appeared near the scene. All evidence was now pointing towards this deputy team leader. Another team of police had searched the victim Hyping's home and discovered more suspicious information, helping the investigation move closer to the truth. In Hyping's residence, the investigators found many photos including one of her young son, some family photos, and surprisingly, photos of Hyping with a man. The shocking discovery was that the man in the photos was Duan Ihe, the director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress. Why were Ihe's photos in Hyping's home? The nature of their relationship in those photos was clear without further explanation. There was only one possible explanation. Ihe and Hyping were lovers, but a romantic relationship did not necessarily relate to the murder case. The police still needed to investigate further. With the initial hypothesis of a murder motivated by love or hatred, the investigators identified 3 primary suspects. Hyping's ex-husband, who may still harbor resentment, Chin Ji, the suspicious deputy team leader, and Ihe, the secret lover of the victim. Each of them had the motive and capability to carry out this brutal act. The circle of suspicion quickly narrowed as the police eliminated Hyping's ex-husband from the suspect list. However, an unexpected discovery pushed the investigation in an entirely new direction: the special relationship between Chin Ji and Ihe. Chin Ji was not just an ordinary police officer, but Ihe's nephew-in-law. This revelation was like a lightning bolt splitting the night sky, making the investigators sense an even greater conspiracy unfolding. Just 3 days after the explosion, on July 11th, with irrefutable evidence from the mobile phone and other physical evidence, Chin Ji was arrested in Qingdao. During the interrogation, in an atmosphere of tension disguised as a tea invitation, Chin Ji quickly realized his situation. As an experienced police officer, he understood that when his colleagues had traced his whereabouts, it meant they possessed evidence he could not refute. Thus, Chunji quickly confessed the entire crime process as directed by Ihei. Only 4 days after the horrific explosion, an even greater earthquake had shaken the political circles of Jinan. The suspect Ihei, the incumbent director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress, a provincial-level official, was apprehended by a joint investigation team from the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission, the Provincial Public Security Department, and the Provincial Procuratorate. Faced with irrefutable evidence, after just 1 hour of interrogation, the powerful official's facade completely collapsed. Ihei admitted to orchestrating the explosion on July 9th, using his own nephew-in-law, Chinji, as a tool to carry out this evil plan. During the interrogation, he acknowledged his regret, but not for taking a life, only for the method he had chosen. With chilling indifference, Ihei declared that if given the chance he would still kill Haiping, only he would choose a different method. In his tone, there was not a hint of remorse for the death of his former lover, only deep hatred and determination to end what he called their ill-fated romance in a way that was perfect to him. Behind those cold words lay the haunting question: what had transformed their love into such deep hatred? The answer began with Duan Ihei's testimony, as he revealed the origin of this tragedy, a fleeting romance that had begun 14 years earlier. Duan Ihei was born on January 17, 1946, into a poor farming family. His childhood was full of hardship. The early mornings cutting grass in the mist, the long days herding buffalo under the sun, the late evenings feeding the pigs. A deep scar on the back of his left hand from a wood-cutting accident remained an indelible mark of those difficult years. But poverty could not stop his ambition. Through extraordinary effort, in 1965, Ihei passed the entrance exam to enter Xi'an Jiaotong University. As the first college student from his village, he became the pride of the local community. Likened to a golden phoenix taking flight from the chicken coop, Ihei did not disappoint those expectations. His college degree opened the door to his official career. With his shrewd interpersonal skills and exceptional capabilities, his career rose like a ship sailing with the wind, step by step climbing the ladder of power. At the peak of his power, Ihei maintained the simple and approachable demeanor of his peasant origins. Whenever he visited his hometown, even as a high-ranking official, he insisted the driver stop the car outside the village. Alone, he would walk the familiar dirt roads, stopping to chat with the villagers, inquiring about their lives. A journey of just a few hundred meters that could be completed in minutes would often last an hour with him. These genuine gestures made the villagers absolutely trust that Ihei was an incorruptible official, indifferent to fame and fortune. But fate has unexpected turns. Everything changed when a beautiful woman named Lu Haiping entered his life. In 1996, a new opportunity for advancement came when Ihei was transferred to Liaoqing, Shandong Province. Since his wife, who was working at a provincial hospital at the time, could not accompany him, he had to go alone. After arriving in Liaoqing, Ihei was arranged to stay in a guest house of the agency to take care of the living needs of the new official. The management arranged a young employee, Lu Haiping. She was only 18 years old that year. Lu Haiping was thoughtful and attentive, taking meticulous care of Ihei. She would wash his dirty clothes, prepare delicious meals when he was hungry, and even have his toothpaste ready. In those lonely months away from his wife, Haiping's considerate care gradually invaded Ihei's heart, sowing the seeds of an unnamed affection. For the young Haiping, Ihei represented not only a powerful official, but the embodiment of success and authority, an invisible magic that always had a strange allure for women. Gradually, their daily interactions ignited a feeling that went far beyond the ordinary relationship between an official and a servant. He was 48 years old, while Haiping was only 18. This significant age gap seemed to foreshadow the tragic ending of their relationship. When he was transferred back to Jinan, he should have ended this illicit affair. But unable to part with his young lover, he committed his first abuse of power. He arranged for Haiping to be transferred to work at a company under the Shandong Provincial Electronics Industry Bureau and bought her a private apartment, creating a parallel life alongside his official family. Ihei treated this mistress quite well. As he advanced, he did not forget to bring his young lover along on the climb up the social ladder. In late 1997, when he was promoted to a higher political rank with greater power, he used his influence to place Haiping in a position at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Not only that, he also bought her another apartment and a car. Under the shadow of Ihei's power, Haiping quickly built a luxurious life in Jinan. Her name suddenly carried weight, even making other officials show her some respect. Not only enjoying this newfound wealth, Haiping also cleverly seized the opportunity to take care of her own family. She brought her parents and younger sister to Jinan, and through whispers on the pillow, she persuaded Ihi to arrange jobs and household registration for her relatives. Haiping's insatiable greed had led the once incorruptible Ihi down the path of corruption. To satisfy her constant demands, he was forced to start accepting money to expedite matters. When rumors of his corruption reached the ears of Ihi's wife, her reaction surprised many. Instead of demanding a divorce, she chose to persuade her husband, hoping he would stop before it was too late. In front of his wife, Ihi pretended to listen and declared he had cut ties with Haiping. But behind those promises, he continued to cheat, turning his relationship with the young lover into an even more carefully hidden illicit affair. To deceive the public, Haiping even married a doctor. But in reality, the two continued their secret trysts. The truth was finally exposed when the doctor husband discovered this hidden relationship and filed for divorce. Ironically, Duan Ihe not only destroyed his own family, but also contributed to the collapse of his lover's marriage. The sense of betrayal and injury gradually transformed into an insatiable greed in Haiping's heart. If she could not possess this man's heart completely, she was determined to exploit his power to the fullest. In her mind, a twisted logic took shape. If she could not have his love, she would demand as much material wealth as possible as a guarantee for her own precarious future. In 2006, with ever-growing ambition, Haiping requested a job transfer. As usual, He abused his power to transfer her to the Land Resources Bureau. But it seemed nothing could fill the abyss of ambition within this woman. She continued to demand a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment and the latest car model. This was the residence and car she was using when the incident occurred. Haiping's greed was not simply a desire for material goods, but rooted in the loneliness and resentment that had accumulated. In the vast and cold apartment, she lived a shadowy existence, waiting only for Ihi's hurried visits at 10 o'clock at night. After years of living in the darkness of their illicit affair, Haiping craved an official status, wanting to marry Ihi and stand beside him openly, no longer having to hide behind the walls of deception. But for Ihi, from the very beginning, she was just a fleeting romance, never to become his legitimate wife. The arguments between them grew increasingly violent, and in her anger, Haiping began to use their secret relationship as a double-edged sword, threatening her older lover. This had enraged He greatly. He felt that after he had elevated Haiping so much, she had become ungrateful and unappreciative. Therefore, he began to seek ways to eliminate this threat. Haiping's threats were like strong winds blowing at the tree of He's power. The fear of his secret being exposed gradually transformed into a dark intent in his mind. Though he tried to suppress it, the thought of eliminating this threat continued to smolder in his heart, waiting to erupt. In his daily work, he silently sought someone to carry out this plan. This person had to be not only trustworthy enough to keep the bloody story secret, but also bold enough to execute it. After many sleepless nights, he decided to choose his nephew-in-law, Qinji. As the son-in-law of He's elder brother, Qinji owed a considerable debt of gratitude to He, who had used his power to secure the police officer's position and help him advance. This familial relationship, reinforced by privileges and benefits, was an invisible chain binding their fates. In He's eyes, this was the perfect tool for his sinister plan. In 2007, when Qinji visited He's home for the Lunar New Year, He spoke to him about his troubles and expressed a desire for him to deal with Haiping. Qinji immediately agreed, saying that since his work was all arranged by He naturally had to help him solve this problem. After discussion, they decided to eliminate Haiping through a staged traffic accident. But they later found that Haiping's activities were mostly confined to the city center, where it would be difficult to gain enough speed. If they acted carelessly, not only would they fail to kill Haiping, but they could also expose their own identities. Therefore, this plan was abandoned. With the first plan failing, Qinji came up with another idea. As a former military engineer, he knew how to manufacture explosives. He thought of using an explosive device to resolve this issue. After the explosion, all traces of the crime would be completely erased, a seemingly perfect strategy. After Qinji shared this idea, He also found it to be a good one. He provided Qinji with detailed information about Haiping, such as her home address and car keys. As a police officer, Qinji easily exploited his network of connections to obtain the controlled explosive. He had a good relationship with a garage owner named Chen Chongbing, 40 years old, who was skilled in remote control car devices. In the privacy of the garage, the two began their deadly experiments. The first 2 detonation tests were carried out to practice, leaving the final 3 triggers for the real act. Along with 2 kilograms of explosives and a remote control they had secretly constructed, they created a weapon that could tear apart metal and flesh in an instant. But as the murder weapon was completed, something in Chunji's conscience suddenly awakened. He began to hesitate before the destructive power of what he had created. The thought that a simple button press could take a life, leaving no chance for redemption, began to haunt his mind. Though Yi constantly urged him on, Chunji continued to find ways to delay. In July 2007, Chunji could no longer postpone it. On the afternoon of July 9th, Chunji and Chongbing drove the police car to the area where Haiping worked. Holding the bomb, they quickly located Haiping's light blue Honda. With trembling hands, they used Duan Yi's remote control to open the car door, then carefully placed the deadly bomb under the driver's seat. In just a brief minute, they had completed the entire process. As it was their first time doing something like this, after placing the bomb, they hastily left the scene. On the road where Haiping usually drove home, the 2 evil perpetrators held their breath, waiting for their target. But fate played a cruel trick. After just 5 minutes of surveillance, they lost sight of the victim. Chunji decided to take a desperate final move. Driving to Jinsha Road, the familiar route Haiping always took. Here, they patiently waited for her to pass by. Chunji, with a shaky hand on the remote control, sat silently in the police car, waiting for the signal to activate the devastating device, while Chongbing got out to observe, ready to signal when Haiping appeared. At the time, there were many vendors and elderly people sitting and enjoying the cool air. To ensure Haiping would pass through here, Chongbing even casually asked an elderly woman sitting nearby, "Is this the Rue residential community up ahead?" This seemingly innocuous question, coupled with the unusual tense expression and accent of the strange man, caught the old woman's attention. A few minutes later, Haiping's light blue Honda appeared on the street that afternoon, unaware of the impending tragedy. Chongbing quickly made the call. Just seconds later, a horrific explosion tore through the peaceful evening air. The devastating power of the blast not only destroyed the car and its occupant, but also injured a street vendor nearby. This was the explosion on July 9th in Jinan that shook all of China. While the panicked crowd rushed and scrambled in chaos, a pair of keen-aged eyes did not miss an unusual detail. The strange man with the unfamiliar accent had hurriedly jumped into a police car and disappeared into the chaotic traffic. Noticing this peculiar detail, the elderly woman managed to jot down the license plate number of that police car, a seemingly minor detail that would become a key to unlocking the secret of the case. On July 13th, was taken away from his office. Within an hour, he had confessed everything and provided a long list of his social connections. After the trial, the court determined that IHI had abused his position to receive and demand property from others, totaling 1.69 million yuan, approximately $250,000 in cash, and 1.33 million yuan, approximately $195,000 in assets of unknown legal origin. Thus, a bomb explosion had led to the exposure of corruption among government officials, and the investigation began to expand. In this tragedy, Chongbing had shown herself to be no passive pawn. With the keen instincts of someone who had weathered many storms, she had sensed the tragic fate awaiting her. Before her destiny was sealed, she had told her family, "If I die, it is certainly Yi who killed me." He had also thought he could use his power to conclude the incident as an accidental death due to the hot weather causing a fuel tank explosion. But he did not realize that the distance to his own death was only 59 days away. After the incident, he was quickly arrested, but he did not think he would be sentenced to death. He thought they would give him a chance at rehabilitation to enjoy his old age. Therefore, throughout the interrogation, he remained quite relaxed and cooperative. During the questioning, he even recounted his entire 61-year life story. In the interrogation room, the 3 perpetrators revealed different faces before justice. Chongbing, with a miserable expression, desperately pleaded, citing the moments of hesitation before attaching the explosive device as evidence of his intention to abandon the crime. Chunji, trying to avoid the death penalty, repeatedly claimed he was just a victim of Yi's coercion. As for Yi, he admitted his guilt. However, when the prosecutor asked him if he regretted it, and what he would do if given another chance. His answer chilled even the seasoned investigators. I do regret, but only for choosing to use explosives. If given the chance to do it again, I would still kill her. In fact, this was not the first time he had plotted to eliminate his lover. He said he had previously planned to kill her through gas poisoning, tire blowout on the highway, and many other methods, but all had failed. There was one time when Yipping's car had a flat tire before getting on the highway, and he not only failed to kill her, but had to take responsibility for fixing her car. Ultimately, the court sentenced the defendant Duan, Yihi and Chinji to death, while the defendant Chin Chongbing was sentenced to life imprisonment. The romance between Liu Heping and Duan Yi, he showed that the 30-year age gap was not just a number, but a chasm that could not be filled by money or power. When selfish love intertwined with corrupted power, tragedy was inevitable. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper,